Yesterday on Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup, a late put on a show as she tries to join Zenyatta as the only female racehorse to win the Breeders' Cup Classic. Paradise Woods is aiming for the distaff. She loves it at Santa Anita. All 5 career wins have been here, and she showed how much she loved the racetrack on Sunday morning out in front of the grandstand. Then there is our reporter, Michelle Yu. She's looking for horse kisses, and Maxfield was obliging before he goes to the TVG Breeders' Cup Juvenile. But a new day is dawning on this Monday as we get closer to 2 days of championship racing for a record 10th time at Santa Anita. This morning, you will see Midnight Bisou, a candidate for Horse of the Year and the heavy favorite for the Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff, her final workout, and then Bob Baffert supervising the final workout for the biggest race of all and the expected favorite, McKenzie, in the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic. It's all ahead on Here, Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup. Once again, good morning and welcome to our set just off the paddock here at Santa Anita. It's all coming together. It's officially Breeders' Cup week on this Monday. I'm Todd Schrupp. Very pleased to be with Simon Bray. Simon, thoughts yesterday? We saw horses arriving for quarantine from Europe. We're going to see them very soon. But as far as the main horses here stateside that have been preparing, who impressed you the most yesterday?
I was impressed. I thought a late put in a good workout. It was only 3 furlongs. We didn't see much, but I like the way she's getting over the ground. I thought we saw a good work from Paradise Woods. I mean, she, again, looked well, moving over the track. Whether she's good enough to win that race, I don't know. But I think the key to this morning is looking forward to those big works from McKenzie and Midnight Bisou. You can really tell kind of the tension in the air has changed here at Santa Anita in the last 48 hours. As you mentioned, it's the start of Breeders' Cup week. I just spent 10, 15 minutes at Clocker's Corner, and there's a big buzz there now as more connections come in, and these big trainers, Asmussen and Baffert, putting the final touches on the 2 big runners, McKenzie and Midnight Bisou.
And we're going to take you right along with the connections of McKenzie. We're going to be right there with Bob Baffert. That McKenzie workout will happen live during our show. Literally just before we came on air, Midnight Bisou was coming out for that all-important workout that Simon referenced, and we were there as she was tacked up and headed out to the racetrack. Midnight Bisou, it has been a remarkable year, a year that is so good, Simon. This is unusual that you can stay in the distaff division and yet be considered a candidate for Horse of the Year. This is really a lot like Lady's Secret in some respects, going back almost 35 years.
Yeah, because it's what she's done, yes, but it's the lack of dominance in some of the other divisions by a key contender. So there's been no true standout in the classic division or in the 3-year-old division. So she's inherited that mantle right now as a horse that's a major player in the Horse of the Year division. This was her coming out earlier. It was about probably 35, 40 minutes ago. And she came out of the barn area and just is jogging right now, trotting on the track here.
The Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff favorite, Midnight Bisou, eventually broke off, and with the sun just starting to rise, put in this workout. And Simon, she's a horse that started her career in Southern California, and then she went on the road, and she never looked back. She has been on this year, what an ambitious campaign, from Sam Houston, Oaklawn Park, Belmont, Monmouth, Saratoga, and now she returns to her native Southern California. She has a great record here at Santa Anita, but it is going back a little ways. 4 starts here lifetime with 3 wins in a second. But these are familiar grounds for her. And we should also point out, this is the coolest morning that we've had. These temperatures were around 52 degrees when a lot of these horses came out at this point in time, and it stayed cool here in the morning. And you can see horses are thriving under these conditions. How do you feel Midnight Bisou is going in the first part of this work?
Oh, I thought she's looked phenomenal. I had the pleasure of watching this work live here about 15, 20 minutes ago, just before we came on air. It was timed in as a half-mile workout, and this is typical Steve Asmussen. 50-4 was the final time here, and look at it. I mean, this is all you want with about 6 days to go before the big race. Moving beautifully. As you mentioned, she'll be running over a 6th different racetrack this year, but this is a track and a surface she's accustomed to. And, we should give a nod to Bill Spohr. He started her career out well here and did very well. She was 3rd in the Kentucky Oaks for him behind Monomoy Girl. But look at her move there. Rider is motionless. The connection should be delighted with this final move leading into the distaff. Absolutely perfect.
Last year, she was 3rd at Churchill Downs in the Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff. beaten a length and a half, but the expectations were so different. She was about 6-1 last year. Monomoy Girl was the heavy favorite and delivered, but then Midnight Bisou has taken the baton and gone through a 7-race stretch where she has not been defeated. She's taken on the best in her division, and she's come up a winner every time.
Well, here's the thing. She faced Monomoy Girl 3 times last year, once in the Oaks, once up at Saratoga, and once in the Distaff. She was beaten 2 to 3 lengths each time. Her races were great, but they just weren't as good as Monomoy Girl. With Monomoy Girl sidelined and out of the picture this year, that's why she's picked up the mantle, and she has thrived in 2019. 7 for 7. Look at her.
When you look at favorites like this, the tendency is to look for something that suggests they're vulnerable.
Yep.
We haven't seen that from Midnight Bisou this week.
No, not at all. I can't find any. I mean, I'm not back there in the barn looking in a feed tub every day. I mean, that's one key thing. But she wouldn't be like this. Asmussen, wouldn't present her like this in a workout if she wasn't doing great. She is phenomenal. She looks tremendous. Look at her just jogging out.
Midnight Bisou, moments ago, in the workout, a half mile, 50 and 4, and now literally just minutes ago, coming off the racetrack. And as we said, the sun's starting to rise here in Southern California on an absolutely perfect day. Everything you could possibly want in a venue is here at Santa Anita. And Midnight Bisou, representing the best of the Distaff division and the best thoroughbred racehorses in the world, are here for the 10th time, the Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita. There's Midnight Bisou. As she comes back, what would be the routine for the rest of her morning? Okay,
they're going to take the tongue tie off. You see that? And that's that little strap that goes over the tongue to keep it below the bit. And they're taking the tack off. They'll put a blanket on her. Probably walk her for 5 or 10 minutes, let her have a few sips of water. Then after that 10-minute walk, they'll go ahead and bathe her. The main thing is to keep her warm. I don't know whether they're going to bathe her this morning with the temperatures being at 50 degrees. They'll wash her legs down. She won't get a full bath that everyone's accustomed to seeing when it's nice and hot. My cutoff was always 60 degrees for a full bath in the morning, so it's below that temperature, and she'll walk for, I would think, a good 45, 50 minutes, and then go back in the stall and come out this afternoon.
As we said, Midnight Bisou, trained by Steve Asmussen. His trusted assistant, Scott Blasi, has been supervising a lot as Steve makes his way out here for the Breeders' Cup. And catching up with Scott, Michelle Yu.
Then you have to talk to us.
I do?
Yeah.
Can I go train Mitole first?
Okay, that was a very unguarded moment. We're trying to bring you as much as we can live.
It's live TV.
But we also want to let people know they're on camera, depending on what's going on there. But we will catch up with Scott Blasi, who actually sat down for a cup of coffee with Michelle Yu, but it doesn't have that much time this morning, but he does have time to comment on Midnight Bisou. Once again, here's Michelle.
With assistant trainer Scott Blasi, who has to head out to train another horse, just overall impression of the work today?
We weren't looking for a whole lot, just wanted her to get over the track easy. She looked fast, finished up well, and she's ready to go.
All right, thanks for joining us, Scott. And Mitole about to head out here too, guys.
That's what I love about this show. We have this plan for Midnight Bisou, and now we're going to be able to see Mitole out there. Mitole, one of the expected favorites for the Breeders' Cup Sprint. The Steve Asmussen barn has a number of big horses throughout the 2 days of championship racing here. Midnight Bisou is owned by Jeff Bloom. Jeff Bloom has also been very accessible to us throughout this week, and he is throughout the year. And Gabby Gaudet is with him.
Here with Jeff Bloom, post-workout for Midnight Bisou. She's cooling out behind us. Overall, Jeff, what do you think of this work this morning, and what was everybody trying to get out of it?
Just picture perfect. This was supposed to be just a super easy kind of maintenance breeze, let her get over the track. It really reminded me of her breeze on the Oklahoma track at Saratoga just prior to the personal ensign. She just looked fast and covered the ground in a huge way. It was beautiful. It was just picture perfect.
I saw you kind of going from being a little bit nervous and anticipating the work to it looked like a visible sigh of relief, and you had a smile on your face after the work was completed. Tell me about kind of the emotions before that final work before a big race for you.
Well, I'm inclined to be carrying around a lot of nervous energy anyways, as you might have noticed, but especially when you're on the ground and not in control. But that's an important work. And, most of the heavy lifting had already been done anyways. So you just want to see her go out there, have a clean path to get her work done, which she was able to do. And Angel, who gets on her every day, knows her so well. And so as soon as they got out there and started the breeze, I felt pretty comfortable. She looked really well.
And you followed her all the way back to the barn. She's currently cooling out behind us. I saw you take a really close look at her. What were you looking at? Were you looking at if she was blowing or if anything post-work?
No, it's just I've been around her so much, just watching how she's carrying herself and how she's responding to things. But she's the kind of filly with a breeze like that. She's cooled out by the time she makes it back to the barn anyways. She's just such a classy individual. You might have noticed, when she starts walking back off the racetrack, she just drops her head down. She's checking out the site. She's not worried about anything. She knows her work was done, and she's happy to make her way back to the barn.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you.
And guys, after following Jeff around for one morning, I don't know who's faster, Midnight Bisou or Jeff, because he is impossible to follow. He's a very, very fast walker.
Yeah, he is always in motion, and he has been a fixture on a lot of circuits. We've come to know him well in Southern California. And what I love, Simon, about the Breeders' Cup, we talk about some of the tremendous pedigrees that show up here, horses bred in the purple. Then there's a horse like Midnight Bisou, an $80,000 purchase by Midnight Loot out of the Repent Mare Diva Delight, who has earned over $3 million.
Yeah, we're accustomed to seeing the big, $2-3 million purchases from Godolphin, from Coolmore. This is not the case. And, it's a partnership. Jeff Bloom has a long storied history in horse racing. He was a jockey for a while, exercise rider. That's why he referenced in the interview there, it's tough being on the ground because he can ride thoroughbreds and he knows what to do. And then he worked for West Point Thoroughbreds for a while and then branched out on his own and started his own partnership. And it's been mightily successful with the limited starters he's had compared to these big powerhouse stables.
And at the opening of Del Mar in previous seasons, everyone looks forward to the party that he usually throws. And he's had a lot of launch parties where he's brought in bands like Styx, Jefferson Starship. He loves music almost as much as he loves horse racing, and he's very good at the horse racing side.
With as much as she's earned and she's going through the sale, he can step it up a little bit.
Yeah,
bring
maybe
in Coldplay.
Yeah. That would be your request anyway. Midnight Bisou getting ready for the Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff. You watched it here on Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup, and you're going to see live McKenzie preparing for the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic. That work we are anticipating is at 7:45 a.m. We have reporters all over the grounds here to bring you the latest with McKenzie. We anticipate following him from the barn to the racetrack. You will watch it happen live. We'll also talk to Flavian Pratt's jockey agent, Derek Lawson.
That might be the highlight.
Yeah, Derek Lawson is
free entertainment.
Yeah, just give him a microphone and let him talk. When we come back, we will be taking a look at Mitole preparing for the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Busy morning here on Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup, presented by TVG. Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup continues. When we went to break, we showed you Mitole waiting very patiently out this morning, preparing for the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Only one loss on the year for Mitole. There was thought before that loss that he could be a Horse of the Year candidate.
It looks like he's going in the gate. He's back in the chute there. You see the assistant starters. Remember, his last work was the very fast 58 and change,
Yes.
5/8 with, I believe it was Mike Smith aboard, working out of the gate. And I'm not sure what they're doing today, whether they're going to go ahead and just stand him in the gate and then work.
Is there a concern, though, with a top-quality sprinter like this, that if you switch them on too much, in other words, you have that sharp 5 furlongs,
Right.
58 and 4 that he had out of the gate, that again, then you're trying to manage this horse all the way up to when you want him to switch it on, and is that for the race itself? So can a workout be too sharp, too good?
It can be in some circumstances, but look at him standing there after a sharp workout last week. I mean, he is just standing perfectly behind the starting gate. So we'll see what he does. Here he is walking forward. Looks like he's just getting ready to stand.
His only loss coming in the Vanderbilt at Saratoga. Prior to that, he won the Met Mile. Took the 4-go last time out. It's been a year where he's won 5 of 6 starts, competing in every big race within the sprint division. But think about pulling off a Met Mile win with a Breeders' Cup Sprint win. That's a double that is very, very difficult, and Mitole's attempting to do that in the Breeders' Cup Sprint on Saturday, which will go as race number 8 on the card. We're watching Mitole right now in the starting gate. And is this going to be one of those situations where they just open the gate and let him just ease on out of there? Or what do you think ultimately, and how long will they probably keep him in there?
And they're just standing in there because he had such a sharp work out of the gate last week. You want to come back and make sure, to your point, that he's not, too excitable. There is. They're backing him out. And I'm not sure what they're going to do here, whether they'll put him in again or not, but that's it, one and done. Yeah, he'll take with the pony. So all this was, fresh off that sharp workout last week, just a schooling session into the gate, and he is standing perfectly. You saw the assistant starter by his head, and then one got up on the other side of the starting gate to simulate if there was a horse next to him. So, yeah, he passed that test, A+.
One of the earliest clients for trainer Steve Asmussen was the Heilig Broats, and they have been with him for a long time, and this is, without a doubt, the best horse they've had with him. They've had a lot of good horses. Mitole, son of Escandarea, out of the Indian Charlie mare, Indian Miss, bred by Edward Cox Jr. in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So Mitole leaves the gate, but right by the gate, Michelle Yu.
Standing with Bill Mott, who's watching Yoshida schooling in the gate right now. And what are you expecting to see here? Is this just routine?
Just routine. He's having an easy day. He worked yesterday. We jogged him a mile today and just, stand him in the gate and make sure everything's good with him.
Since we have 2 sets of gates, the schooling gate and the big gate, does it make a difference which gate they school in?
Well, we usually stand in this one just when we're just schooling and standing. So it probably wouldn't matter too much other than he's going to start in this position anyway. So, you know what I mean?
The big view with the marquee on the side?
There you go, yeah.
How did your horses come out of their works yesterday, Bill?
They look great. All look good. The 2 of them walked, and this horse just jogged.
Thank you, Bill.
One of the best trainers that American Thoroughbred Racing has ever seen. Bill Mott supervising the preparations here for Yoshida and the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic, the highlight to 2 days of racing. And remember, he's also got a late in there, the mare taking on the boys. Back to Mitole. So we watched him walk into the gate, back out of the gate, and now onto the track. And what are you seeing here from Mitole and what they're trying to do after the gate?
Just an easy gallop here. They stood back there behind the starting gate to make sure, everything's perfect and check all those boxes. And it's kind of what Yoshida did, the same after his work just now. So they're just going for an easy gallop here.
And in the same way that you can watch human athletes, let's say in track and field, and they're built differently according to the events they compete in, Mitole is absolutely what you want to see in a sprinter's build.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the 2 comparisons this morning would be Midnight Bisou, a very athletic, sort of feminine looking individual, a little longer in the leg, a little lighter than Midnight Bisou, and that's because, her physique is to carry her a mile and an eighth. Well, this is a little different, a powerhouse. It's more like much more power behind the saddle, and you can see the exercise rider's just trying to keep him slowed down here. The horse wants to do a little more, but he can't because, we're 4 days in front of the race here, and a sprinter, once they get in the top gear, we've seen how fast Mitole can go, and he's ready to go. The cooler weather, the horse is to the inside, and, as a trainer looking on, your fate is in the hands of the exercise rider. So, and you can see when the two horses came up to the inside, he makes him competitive, and he wants to go. So the exercise rider just hanging on there and doing a good job, keeping his hands down and just trying to contain that energy and keep him bottled up until next weekend.
Yeah, defining the word eager, Mitole is absolutely ready for the Breeders' Cup Sprint. And do you get there as a connection, having been a former trainer yourself, Simon, where it's like, can we just do this race tomorrow?
Yeah, for sure. Every day. I mean, you work the horse, okay, and you get through the work. And then in the case of most of them, they walk the day after they work. You heard Bill, 2 of his horses walked, 1 jogged. Okay, so now you can relax the day they're walking because there's no element of risk involved there, or it's diminished, much more diminished when you keep them contained in the barn. But like this, a horse like this, the exercise rider, he'll stand, go to the gate, and he'll try and judge and pick a spot to break off and gallop when the track is quiet. You have some control over that, looking to see and jump in when there's not too much activity.
Do they just want to go around one time? Obviously it depends on the individual.
It depends. Usually, a gallop a mile depends on the horse. I mean, he went round. I think he started back here, right? He came out of the gate, jogged. Yeah, so he's gone a mile. He went one time around the racetrack, so he went a mile.
And later today, there will be a lot of interest in the post position draw for the Breeders' Cup. And in the sprint, post position absolutely key. Knowing what you know about Mitole, where would you want to see him draw if it were about his best opportunity to win the sprint?
I think just not 1 or 2, just to the outside. I think a lot of them would have that desire. We say the 1 hole all the time, and I know it's kind of cliched, but with his running style, I would think just outside in the middle would be perfect. The last time he was in the 1 hole, he was well beaten by Imperial Hidden, and he hit the gate at the start of that race. And that's, you're standing in there a little longer. You can get a little tangled, cross-legged coming out of there. So I think just towards the outside.
Look at the sun glistening off of Mitole. What an impression he has made ever since he arrived here to Santa Anita. Keep in mind, he's been here since September 30th, so Mitole knows this track well, and he is absolutely thriving before the Breeders' Cup Sprint. So many of these horses, their education continues, and we go back once again down by the schooling gate, and Omaha Beach in there preparing for the Big Ass Fans Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, and we've seen him in this position just a few days ago.
Yeah, Richard Mandela does this a lot. I was stabled next to him when I was training a long time, and he's big on gate schooling, and it's the right thing to do because, that's something that I think the more you do, you can overdo it as far as breaking horses out, and once they've run, they're fine. But as far as getting them to relax and stand in there, I don't think you can overdo it. I think you stand them, becomes repetition, habit, and he does it a lot, and it's clearly not affect him. But do you see the difference between the East Coast trainers and the West Coast?
That's right.
Backing the horse out, and the West Coast trainers, when I came from East to West, I noticed that they walked the horse out the front of the starting gate.
And going from south to north, as far as figures, is Omaha Beach. He keeps getting better and better and better with each start. No matter what type of figure you want to use, say the Beyer Speed figure or taking a look at Thorograph figures, look at the improvement race to race. And this is also a sign of what you talked about, trainer Dick Mandela, his patience and getting the most with a horse as they get older. Think about the great Beholder, whom he guided through a remarkable career from age 2 to 6, and how she seemed to improve race to race, year to year. We're seeing that right now with Omaha Beach.
Yeah, he's made that general progression. Well, on Thorgraphs, it's a pretty big jump from, he was 16, 9.5, and then to a 4. But, the horse has either maintained or improved the number since that break in his maiden. And, I think that's key. He hasn't regressed in any of his races since that maiden special weight victory.
Expected to be the favorite in the Big Ass Fans Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, Omaha Beach. Wrecking Crew had a big reputation in Southern California even before he raced, because he was also a big purchase price as a 2-year-old. And we know he has a lot of talent, but does he have enough talent for a race like the TVG Breeders' Cup Juvenile?
I think he's just a cut below some of the horses that we've seen. Look, he's second behind Nucky in the Del Mar Futurity. We know what went wrong there. 8 Rings was unseated as rider. That was kind of a race that was, I think you have to put an asterisk next to. So, look, talented horse, but in my opinion, I mean, to beat the likes of Maxfield and Dennis's Moment, I think he's up against it.
Wrecking Crew, an $875,000 purchase. Took his debut, then was second in the Grade 2 Best Pal, and then, as you talked about, second in the Grade 1 Del Mar Futurity after all that chaos with 8 Rings at the start. He's definitely going to be a factor in this race, because I was talking with Gabby Gaudet this morning about ultimately how does the TVG Breeders' Cup Juvenile play out. We talked about the big 3 horses with 8 Rings and Maxfield and Dennis's Moment. But who is the horse that's going to take the initiative early on? I imagine it might be someone outside of the top 3, and Wrecking Crew might be that horse. He might be sent, and he'll play a factor in this race from a pace point of view.
Yeah, I think he will. I think you're exactly right. I mean, he could be laying close. Dennis's Moment might just end up much closer to the pace because of his talent and as sharp as he is.
And then to me, the biggest question is 8 Rings. Yes, he went gate to wire last time out in the American Pharoah, but much different type of situation here. We've also watched him in the mornings. I'm not sure ultimately what the connections want to do.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether he's better with the lead. He does drift out a little bit. He had that blinker on. I don't know whether he's better just tacking on behind a horse and letting them tow him around there. But I wouldn't be surprised if one of those, maybe a Dennis's Moment going into the race, they think we would like to sit second, but they might end up on the lead.
Yeah, with those big 3, 8 Rings, Dennis's Moment, and Maxfield, it would be a shocking upset if anyone outside of those 3 were to take the TVG Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Got Stormy is preparing for what looks to be a very wide open TVG Breeders' Cup Mile on the turf. And again, with this cooler weather, you can just see horses loving it out here, and perfect surroundings to prepare for the Breeders' Cup. And Got Stormy, when she's good enough, as she showed in the 4-Star Dave, she can beat the boys, and she also had a course record. But, one thing about the 4-Star Dave, that was a really fast pace early on. I'm not sure we're going to get the same thing here. We're definitely going to get a firm turf course like it was that time at Saratoga. But how does Got Stormy look to you?
Well, she was only 22. She was only a length off a 22 and 4 opening quarter at Woodbine with some cut in the ground. She is very eager and wants to do her work. Look at the exercise rider. You can see, just leaning against this is a nerve-wracking moment for exercise riders. They've been in this position before, but you're a week out. There's a lot of cameras on you. You don't want to mess this up. You don't want Got Stormy to do too much. She's taken one hold of her. You can see her hands are on the horse's neck, short rein. And if she moves, if this exercise rider moves her hands, I'm guessing this filly would probably just jump in the bridle and go a little bit too fast. So they're just being patient. She's sitting nice and quiet up there, doing a great job, and a very willing participant. Got Stormy, looks healthy there, got a nice shine to her coat, and just moving beautifully over the ground here. She's a very lovely mover, and she's on the bridle. And horses, when they gallop against the bridle like that, it makes them use themselves better. They carry themselves. Their gait is better. They therefore use the muscles in the correct manner. And look at her coming into the stretch there. Again, we talk about the ears, and you can see, look at her listeners. They're right up in the air.
Gorgeous-looking chestnut daughter of Get Stormy out of the Balabar Gold Mare. Super Phoebe Got Stormy was bred in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, owned by Gary Barber and trained by Mark Cassie. And she has looked fantastic here at Santa Anita, and she'll be trying this turf course for the first time in her career. War of Will comes from the same connections. And War of Will, your Preakness winner. We noticed this just a few days ago if you've been following us every morning, but if you haven't, we'll remind you of it. But we got to watch War of Will in a workout, putting blinkers on in that workout here on Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup. And it was a very, very good workout. It seemed like the blinkers were a good addition to War of Will.
Yeah, they certainly were. And this is his first day we've seen him back since after that work. So usually the first day back to the track after a workout, because they've had a day off, they're going to be a little more aggressive. And with the cooler temperatures, that's going to add, another element for these exercise riders to try and keep these horses from going too fast. And you can see this, again, another horse who wants to do more, clearly came out of his work in good shape, moving well. And at this point, the rider is just trying to contain the energy, keep him bottled up.
Okay, I want to ask you about, you see the exercise rider here does have a whip in the back pocket, and that's not something we've seen a lot in the workouts, that a crop or whip has been used. What is the philosophy? Because these horses, their riders will have a whip in the afternoon, but we don't see it a lot in the morning.
No, I mean, you'll see exercise riders carry a whip, of course. I mean, that's been the focus of discussion in the sport over the past 6 months, not only in this country, but a huge discussion and conversation across over the seas in Europe. But, you know, this is an exercise rider. He probably carries this whip all morning long. He doesn't need it. He doesn't need the horse to sit. You know, even if you carry it in your hand down the side of the horse's neck, the horse can feel it. You're not using it. So he's put it in his back pocket here. He clearly doesn't need it. But it's a tool more often than not for safety. I mean, horses need to be steered out of the way of a problem that's facing them in front of them. Maybe it's a horse coming the wrong way or something like that, or to get their attention, you just use the whip to tap them down the shoulder. We very rarely see now horses whipped in the morning like we see in a race. The restrictions that have employed here at Santa Anita have been well received. And, I think, in my opinion, I think riders and jockeys should be able to carry whips as
Safety.
Yeah.
As
far as using them and how much they use them, that's a whole different discussion. But on the element of safety, a rider should be allowed to carry a whip.
One other question as it relates to Warv. Well, he's not wearing the blinkers in this case, so he
Right.
would only wear the blinkers for an official workout?
Yeah, probably. I mean, he's a horse that doesn't need to gallop him in them. He just works in them. And we saw how aggressive he was with them working, or how eager he was, I should say. If you put him on first day after a work like that, he would be a lot stronger, I would think. So he doesn't need him for galloping, just during the workout. But those whips, yeah, I mean, there's the Ramon Dominguez 360 GT whip we've talked about.
That's right.
It's like a piece of foam on the end of the whip. It makes more noise, and the horses don't feel it. But, yeah, I believe riders should be allowed to carry them because, you're sitting on top of a 1,000-pound animal, and most of these guys are anywhere from 118 to 120 pounds. They need the ability to get a horse's attention once in a while for a safety reason.
We hope that a lot of the knowledge that you're seeing on this show, you now take to appreciate the sport at a new level. But we also hope you take this knowledge and turn it into some winning wagers both Friday and Saturday here at the Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita. And on Future Stars Friday, here is the lineup of those Breeders' Cup races. The 2-year-olds in the spotlight all day long. The Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint. Looking forward to that with a $1 million purse attached to it. And the biggest race of the day on Friday will be the $2 million TVG Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Saturday, look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Breeders' Cup races. Remember, there are supporting races, but there will be 9 Breeders' Cup races as the focus on Saturday, highlighted by the biggest race of the 2 days, the $6 million Longines Breeders' Cup Classic. As far as those betting opportunities, take a look at the guarantees and also take a look at the low takeout that the Breeders' Cup is bringing you. Taking a look at Friday, races 1 through 5, you got an early pick 5 with a $500,000 guarantee, the 15% takeout, and then a $1 million guaranteed late pick 5, which will conclude with the TVG Breeders' Cup Juvenile, also a 15% takeout. And don't forget about the All Breeders' Cup pick 4. On Saturday, they up the guarantees, all outstanding opportunities, including the $1 million Breeders' Cup Ultra Pick 6, $1 million guarantee there. And remember, that is a $1 minimum pick 6. And then the low takeout on the All Breeders' Cup Late Pick 5, $2 million guaranteed there with the low takeout of 15%. And then finally, the All Breeders' Cup Late Pick 4, concluding with the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic with a $2 million guarantee. Wherever Bob Baffert goes, the media is sure to follow. He also has some of the biggest names in the sport in his barn, and with good reason. But he's used to the media watching, and we're going to be right there with him as he's getting McKenzie ready. That is a live look at McKenzie. And McKenzie getting ready to come out onto the track. The expected favorite for the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic. You're going to watch this work as it happens. And we are also efforting to let you watch the work along with Bob Baffert and listen as he works. If you haven't been with us and haven't heard this before, Bob Baffert uses a two-way radio. He's done that since the beginning of his training career with thoroughbreds, so he can communicate with the rider, and you're going to watch and listen to all that as it happens with McKenzie. A huge workout coming up. It's Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup, presented by TVG. We want you to participate in our show. Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup wants your questions. Ask our analysts any question related to past Breeders' Cup, current Breeders' Cup, individual horses, questions about what happens here in the morning. Lots to think about and take in. And you can tweet this question out to us at our individual Twitter handles or, again, anywhere, but put the hashtag QA at the Cup. That's hashtag capital Q, capital A, AT, capital T, HE, capital C, UP, QA at the Cup. We had some fantastic questions yesterday, and we're already getting some.
Got one right now, just off our gate schooling segment. This is from Joey House. Re-gate schooling. Could it be overdone to the point where the horse becomes not as sharp out of the gate? And I can see that where you stand and stand and stand and stand. Now you teach them to stand when the gates are
backing out. Go forward.
Go forward. Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, look, we don't do it every day. We don't gate school every day. But 2 or 3 times a week leading into a big race, I don't think it's overdone. And once the horses get old and older and they've raced a few times, they don't become slower out of the gate.
Joey House, very, very good question. Michelle, what question have you received?
Had so many questions coming in yesterday on social media with the hashtag QA at the Cup. And by the way, keep those coming. But one of the questions that we got was how important after a breeze is the gallop out? And unfortunately, the true answer is it depends. Some trainers really like their horses to move out on the gallop out. Some trainers are okay with the rider standing up at the wire and signaling to the horse that the work is over. So it's really about trends and trainer preference. But on a horse that is galloping out where you can visibly see they want this horse to keep on moving past the wire, you definitely want to look for a horse that doesn't look tired. So he's not instantly slowing down. He is still extending. And you want to see him really finish around that bottom turn. And again, that means reaching out with the rider sitting still or asking him and seeing a response from there. So it's more in the way that they gallop out, not necessarily how important is it. Like if they gallop out, does that mean they're going to be able to go farther? So taking that all into consideration, I know it's not a very clear answer, but hopefully it does help you when you're analyzing the works on your own. Also, keep those questions coming. It's hashtag QA at the Cup. Myself, Gabby, and Joaquin will all be monitoring and answering as many questions or visiting as many horses as we can throughout the rest of the week.
Michelle, touching on something that's very important, maybe obvious to a lot of us, but, you know, a lot of times I think when we get caught up in looking at past performances, we forget that they're individuals. And so every horse, and that's the brilliance to successful trainers, you can't just put a horse in a program. In other words, you can't just, every horse is going to work a half mile a certain time. Every horse is different individually. So some of these answers, that is the bottom line. It depends upon the individual.
Yeah, it is. It's a gray area. You know, it really is. There's no black and white in horse training. You're training individuals. You can't train a Mitole the same way you train a channel maker.
Right.
I mean, and it's a good comparison that we've seen on this show the last 4 or 5 days. And the gallop out, I mean, it all depends. As far as in a race, I don't put much credence into it. You know, everyone, the handicap angle is, oh, he was big on the gallop out, maybe bet him next time. But you have to take in consideration, was it the first start for a horse, you know, who broke slow and finished up nicely? Next time out, he might break sharper and be involved early and not have that leg kick. So there's a whole different way to read into the gallop out.
With the Breeders' Cup happening this Friday and Saturday, you have to remember this has been a work in progress for all these connections to get to these races. And with the highlight being the Breeders' Cup Classic, that has been going on for quite some time through these horses' careers. And TVG has a series that you're going to want to take a look at. It's called All In, The Road to the Breeders' Cup Classic. I've already had a chance to see a lot of these episodes. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, you're going to be able to see this on TVG. Episode 1 tonight, 11 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 o'clock Pacific Time. Check it out. All In, The Road to the Breeders' Cup Classic. Really, really, really good work. Speaking of good work, Joaquin Jaime.
Hi, Bob Baffert, kind enough to give us a ride to the front side as we get ready for McKenzie's work. You just walked out of your office right now. You were talking to Jimmy. What'd you tell Jimmy right now?
We're going to do is we're going to back McKenzie up to about the 6.5, warm him up good, and then he'll turn around and he'll leave probably about the 4.5. He'll go a half, gallop out 5/8, and nothing really, you know, just to perk him up a little bit.
I remember talking to Gabby yesterday. You were talking about how the track seemed heavier yesterday. The track seems to change day in and day out. What has Jimmy told you, your riders told you about the track today?
I think it's a little bit better today, but you never know. It changes every break, so you can't. What I would do is I watch the horse really well by the way he's traveling, and I'm on the radio talking to him, so I'll let him. I can tell if he's, you know, if he look like they're struggling or if they're going too fast. Just I can slow him down, but this is nothing really serious today.
You mentioned the radio. Do we need to make a U-turn? Do you have the radio with you?
I got my radio.
Oh, there it is. When did the walkie-talkie start? How'd that come about?
You know, I think I started them in 1991. It was killing me not to be able to, and then everybody thought I was crazy to do that, and now I think everybody's got them now.
So what sort of instructions are you usually telling these riders on the walkie-talkies?
I usually don't say much. You know, I'll let them know how fast they're going, and I'll tell them to either slow down or pick it up or keep going. It depends. If they went too slow, then I'll let them go a little bit further out. So I really don't know what I'm going to do until they get into the work.
Speaking of the other Breeders' Cup workers that have worked, how have they come out of their last preparations for their Breeders' Cup races?
No, they look good today, so that's what matters. You know, they look good the next day, and so McKenzie's the last one we work, and after this, it's all just, you know, relax and start. You know, and then you think about the draws, the next thing you got to worry about, and once the draw's over, you just sit and wait and figure out what you're going to wear. That's it.
We'll let you sit and wait and let you get McKenzie right here.
I got to pick a tie out. I haven't picked out a tie yet. Depends how I feel, you know.
I can tell you what tie you're going to wear. If it's a big race, I know Bob Baffert's ties. It's going to be that yellow power tie that you usually wear for the Kentucky Derby, or you have the bright red power tie, right? It's going to be one of those.
The reds is the super power tie. That's when I really feel good about it. I don't know yet. I usually wear yellow, some yellow or whatever, but I don't know. I haven't bought it. I got to go buy it this week.
Don't you let Jill do that? I mean,
no,
Jill's the stylist.
I pick out my own ties. I don't pick out her shoes. I don't let her pick out my ties.
What about what color suit you going with then?
No, I use my navy blue. I got my navy blues. I don't finish. Uh-oh, we got, see, Tractors are coming to the 7/8, Jimmy. See how important these radios are?
So now you're just telling Jimmy, giving him an update of where these tractors are and how much time he has?
When to leave the barn, yeah. Because you don't want to get to the out there too early, and they're walking around, and they might. A lot of horses get up there, and they might. I've seen a lot of horses get up there, and they get kicked by another horse. So we gotta be careful.
I mean, how much of this time is just limiting things, just so nothing goes wrong? I feel like you're more so just trying to make sure things don't go wrong at this point, right?
Well, I mean, we do that every day. I mean, this is what we do every day, and so, but like the radios are good because if there's a loose horse or something running back, I let them know, hey, the loose horse, get out of the way, and everybody's ready for it. So, but it's just one of these things. This is my job. We're everybody's all in on the clock right now.
With the team Eclair and Heroes Reward, who do you want on the inside?
I want Drayden and Eclair on the inside.
Are they going to half, Bob?
Yeah, I'll leave the 4.5. See? So
last minute instructions right here.
sometimes I don't know how far I'm going to go until I get out here. Hold on. So how far we're going to go? Let me just see, and I'll watch them. I can, sometimes 5, 4.5, depends. But you have to, we work around the surface. It's a different surface we're trained on now, so it's very. So you don't want to gut your horses out. So.
Does a trainer ever stop thinking? I mean, I feel like you never stop thinking. You walk around your shed all day just thinking of what you're going to do with these horses.
I'm always walking around talking to myself. I'm telling you, it's one of those, especially this week. We're trying to figure out everything's going, and I got to think about other horses, too, that I'm getting ready. So, but I love it, because I just love dealing with these horses. And so when you have a love and passion, and watch them, especially the young horses, watching them, it's like watching these little kids come up. You're looking for the next superstar, the next American Pharoah, and just hoping that maybe this could be the one. Like, to me, I'm very excited about 8 Rings. I think he's just a really superstar type of horse, and but he's got his quirks, so we work around that stuff, and but it's good right now. It's all good.
I was looking at some of your Breeders' Cup statistics. First of all, 15 Breeders' Cup wins that you have for you. 3 Breeders' Cup Classics when you look at Byron and Arrogate and American Pharoah. But I went back and watched an old replay of the very first one in 30 Sloughs. What are your emotions like going into, say, Gulfstream Park 1992, maybe the nerves of that Breeders' Cup to now? How have things changed for you?
Oh, I was really excited. I thought we had a chance to win, and then because 30 Sloughs was the first horse I ever bought, and so when he turned for home, I was so nervous in the paddock. I remember telling Eddie De La Houssaye, "You got to make sure you break, Eddie. You got to be there." And he says, "Hey," and he told me, "Bob, relax, Bob. You need to relax. Don't worry about it. You don't understand, Eddie. The reason I'm nervous is because I got a shot to win. That's why I'm nervous. If you know you don't have a chance to win, you're not nervous." But I knew I had a chance, and when he won, it was like the greatest feeling. One of the great. I didn't have a feeling like that until I won the Kentucky Derby, and so, and for that Breeders' Cup, and I think Arrogate's Breeders' Cup were the best feelings I've had in the because there were races I thought maybe, I think I can win it, but he's gonna have to do something big, and I just remember 30 Sloughs. I remember. I forget how I got down there.
Bob, we got the tractors going right here. I'm sure Jimmy's getting close. We'll let you go. We'll catch up in a bit.
Thank you, sir.
That is going to be the highlight of this show this week. We still have many more shows to go, but only Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup can give you that kind of access. Trainer Bob Baffert getting McKenzie ready for the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic. We'll see the work when we return. For the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic, one of the most significant workouts about to take place, and you're going to see it here on a Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup. McKenzie about to work a half mile. We'll be back with live coverage right after this. Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup, taking you behind the scenes. You watched as McKenzie left the first barn here on the backside at Santa Anita. That belongs to trainer Bob Baffert, and you were with Bob Baffert as Joaquin Jaime rode in the golf cart with him. Thanks for the ride, Bob, playing Uber golf cart driver today. And he also stated what he wanted from McKenzie today. It was not going to be anything too serious. He mentioned it would be officially a half-mile workout, so going 4 furlongs, galloping out 5 furlongs. And this is something we talked about throughout the week, Simon. Bob Baffert does a lot past the wire with his horses, so we need to keep an eye on that here with McKenzie.
Right, left the pony at the 5/8 pole. That's that green and white pole, and then you're going to see that's the half-mile pole he's just passed there, the red and white pole, working on his own. Looks to be moving well. The next pole you'll see is the 3/8. And that's going to be crossing right. I'm hand timing this as I see. Right there. You see past that 3/8 pole right there. And looks to be moving extremely well here over this surface. And I like in the interview there, Bob, I think some of the best trainers, and it goes back to, having horses working in a blanket program where you do the same with everything. Some of the best trainers do things by feel. They leave their decisions to the last minute, whether it's how far they're going to work. I think Bobby Frankel was like that. I think Richard Mandela's like that. Bill Mott's like that. The late Henry Cecil, who I worked for, was like that as well. And here he comes through the lane here, finishing up nicely. Big, long striding horse. You would think, looking at him,
he'd handle the mile and a quarter fine.
No question, with that physique and the way he travels.
But previously, that has kind of been his undoing, especially, Santa Anita's a track that he likes, but in the big cap, he got beat by Gift Box, beaten a nose. Mongolian Groom was third in there. Mongolian Groom is back for more, and it defeated him last time out in the Grade 1. Awesome again. But McKenzie definitely thriving here in the mornings, completing this half mile. His previous work was 7 furlongs back on October 22nd, so coming back in about 10 days' time. to now work this half mile and the strong gallop out in the 5 furlongs. With what Bob Baffert said he wanted going into this, did he get what he wanted by your observation?
Oh, for sure. I mean, if Joaquin takes the golf ride back to the barn, golf cart ride back to the barn, he's going to be, have a happy Uber driver taking him back there, because I think he's going to be very happy. Nice, quiet track. Bob's very observant of that and getting a good surface. You see it's a fresh, hard surface. Jimmy Bonds on the pony will hook up with him again, and he'll jog back to the barn and cool out and get a well-deserved pat there from the rider.
McKenzie will have Joel Rosario aboard for the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic. And we see a lot of horses today enjoying the environment here at Santa Anita with, as we said, the markedly cooler temperatures and obviously the idyllic surroundings here. And one of them certainly is McKenzie, as he calls Santa Anita home. Very familiar with it and expected to be the favorite in the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic. And that's what we've been talking about. We haven't seen a whole lot from favorites over the course of the week in their preparations where you go, okay, something, I don't know about this horse this time around. McKenzie is definitely going to fire his best. The question is, will his best at 1.25 miles get it done against this group? As it's been said before, they all get the distance, just some faster than others. We were with Bob Baffert live as he came over to get in position to watch the workout from McKenzie as well as communicate. And this is a look at him in the middle of the work, and you can see, I mean, there is obviously a little bit more tense there, but watch the reaction after the work. Yeah, there you go. All is good with McKenzie. And even a guy like him where everyone thinks, okay, Bob Baffert's a majority of the time got the best horse. He doesn't have a care in the world. No, every trainer has a lot to worry about and a lot to care about.
I'm telling you, that guy is more wound up inside than you see on the outside, the exterior. He comes across as playful, very accessible with the media, very confident in what he does. But believe me, inside, I mean, he's doing, his stomach's like a washing machine, I think, this week. And he'll tell you that.
Joaquin?
Bob McKenzie with his final preparations for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Your observations?
It went really smooth. I'm very happy. Just couldn't have. It went just right like I wanted it. He did a great job. J.C. Diaz did a great job. Picked it up when I wanted him to pick it up. Galloped out really nice. Shut it down when I told him to shut it down. And, I mean, there's no excuses. He's as ready as I can get him, and we're looking forward to it now.
How do you feel? Because immediately after we crossed the line in this work, we saw this big exhale from you. How are you now?
Well, that's why, these works are so important because, you can make them or break them in the works. And it went perfect. It went perfect. I couldn't have asked for anything. I couldn't really just love the way it went. And the kid executed. I made a last-minute call there, put a different rider on him. I do that. And
why was that?
I didn't want him to go too fast, and I want to control the work. And he's used to the radio, so I want a guy with the radio on there. So, no, it worked out well, and so now we just got to hopefully get a good draw and good racing luck. And now I might be wearing a red tie. I don't know. All right.
Thanks for the time, Bob. Go pick out that red tie. Guys?
Great stuff, Joaquin. And later today will be the post position draw for the Breeders' Cup races over the 2 days, Friday and Saturday, taking place here in that beautiful WinStar facility, which is also serving breakfast right about now and watching our show.
That was an excellent segment. I tell you what, from a trainer's standpoint, there's no bigger sense of relief than getting that final work in and getting it executed perfectly. And a true credit to the rider, the J.C. Diaz. And you saw how fluid the situation was. Most people would think McKenzie's working. The last work before the Breeders' Cup Classic, as a trainer, days ahead who's going to work, how far you're going to work. But that's the mark of a good horseman and a good trainer and a good manager in business. You have a gut feeling, I don't want him to go too fast. I'll put this guy on J.C. Diaz. He's used to the radio. You put a kid up there or a jockey up there that's never worked with the radio before, and, you could have a reverse effect.
And the last comment you could hear there from Bob Baffert, the picture of health, and McKenzie does look to be thriving, without a doubt.
No question about that.
McKenzie getting ready for the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic, his final workout. You saw it here live on Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup, presented by TVG. Bob saying now we just got to get a good post position. Is that when you think about the 1.25 miles here at Santa Anita? A lot of trainers just look at it. There isn't a bad post position because they've got so much time to sort themselves out before the first turn. What type of post position do you think he wants?
I think he wants to be towards the outside. He doesn't want to be down, even though it's 1.25 miles. We're going to get into that a little bit later on in the show. But earlier this year, he was drawn post 1, and I don't think that's the place he really wants to be.
Okay, we'll be talking about thoughts from our analysts about horses that will be prominent in their various divisions over the 2 days at the Breeders' Cup and what post positions their connections might be wanting. That'll be a little bit later on. But we rejoin the progress of horses preparing for their big races Friday and Saturday here at the Breeders' Cup. This is a look at Engage in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Engage came to hand last time out at Keeneland, pulling off what you'd have to say was an upset win, but by virtue of that win, Engage is now here in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Engage taking the Phoenix last time out at Keeneland, a Grade 2 event, and Engage rallied from well off the pace that day, and normally a horse that sets up a little bit closer, but Engage getting good at the right time, and another horse for trainer Steve Asmussen.
Yeah, he started his career with Chad Brown, who, campaigned him nicely in his 3-year-old year without, getting a major stakes win. But he was knocking on the door against Promises Fulfilled, Forensic Fire. And he's 2 for 2 with Asmussen, a bit like Midnight Bisou. He picks up these horses from other trainers, and he's gone undefeated with a pair of them, Midnight Bisou and Engage. Midnight Bisou 7 for 7 this year. Engage 2 for 2, and just moving nicely across the racetrack here. But his biggest task is a horse that's probably 2 stalls down from him, Mitole, his stablemate.
Yeah, and it is always a deep field, especially so this year in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Engage, an upset winner last time out in the Phoenix, and would be an even bigger upset if this horse were to be able to take the Breeders' Cup Sprint.
He's got some versatility, though. Keeneland, he launched from far back, right? He's 5 lengths back, and he's been close to the pace against weaker, so I wouldn't expect to see him involved early. I would look for that move from off the pace again.
Engage, just a little while ago, out on the track for trainer Steve Asmussen, son of Into Mischief out of the Speightstown mare Nefertiti, was bred by Woods Edge Farm in the Commonwealth of Kentucky and is campaigned by Woodford Racing. Engage will be in the Breeders' Cup Sprint on Saturday, scheduled to go as race number 8 on the card. Back to McKenzie. He is now just leaving the racetrack, so Bob Baffert will go back there to see him. And you also heard Bob Baffert when talking to Jimmy Barnes, his trusted assistant for so many years. They had another pair working out there, and he had to get instructions there. So, yeah, while we're focusing on McKenzie, this is a barn that has horses all over the place, and particularly Breeders' Cup week, not just in the Breeders' Cup races, but in the supporting races as well prior to that. But McKenzie making his way back to the very first barn. When you come in to Santa Anita, you know exactly where the Baffert barn is for its location.
Straight up that horse path
and
right
then,
there.
And then the signs that are outside.
Yeah.
Triple Crown winner, American Pharoah, Triple Crown winner, Justify.
Yeah, absolutely. And he'll walk back to the... look at him. Look how relaxed. That was nothing for him. As fit as this horse is, he'll be halfway cooled out by the time he gets back to the barn. But there you can see him coming into the stable area now.
If McKenzie pulls off a Longines Breeders' Cup Classic win, is he back into the Horse of the Year conversation? Is it enough? Obviously it's going to depend on what happens in the race prior to that with Bricks and Mortar in the Breeders' Cup turf. It's going to maybe even depend on what happens with Midnight Bisou. But you look at his up and down year, 6 starts, 2 wins, 4 seconds. Is a win in the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic going to match up with, say, an undefeated year for a horse like Bricks and Mortar on the turf?
I don't think so, to be honest with you. I know it's the Breeders' Cup Classic, and that weighs heavily on a lot of voters, but the campaign that Bricks and Mortar has had, why should he be penalized just because he's a turf horse, in my opinion?
Right.
It's a body of work.
And I think the attitudes have changed with turf racing being more prominent in the United States.
Yeah, exactly. Look what we've seen with Wise Dan over the years and things like that. But, it's for a body of work. So I think the thing about this year, the Horse of the Year conversation, usually it's a dominant horse and their fate is in their hands, right?
Yeah.
They have to win the... Now you're hoping, not only do you have to win your race, but you're hoping somebody else doesn't have to win their race as well. There's a lot of moving parts this year with the wide open nature of it.
So many scenarios as it relates to Horse of the Year. And then the story with McKenzie that overrides everything and overshadows everything is the new rider, Joel Rosario. Mike Smith has been the one guiding McKenzie. The Connections decided to make a change. So we decided to take a look at horses to win the Breeders' Cup Classic with a jockey riding them for the first time. It has happened before. In fact, it's happened several times. Frankie Dettori aboard Ravens Pass right here in Southern California at Santa Anita. Skip away, Mike Smith. So he's been in that position before, although he's being taken off McKenzie. He got aboard Skip Away for the first time in 1997. He went on to victory. Jerry Bailey with that shocking upset in our Kong. So there is some precedent here. We heard a lot of praise for the exercise rider aboard McKenzie, and catching up with him now, Gabby Gaudet.
That's right, Todd. You probably didn't hear it, but there was a lot of praise for you today coming from Bob Baffert. And he was talking about the radio situation here. And I see you have an earpiece here. Tell me what you're actually wearing and what you're hearing during the work.
Only Bob told me what time I go, go easy, more fast. That's it, not much.
Show me what you're wearing. So you're wearing an earpiece here, and then it connects to the radio here. So he just speaks to you through this radio, and it connects. So you can focus on the horse and focus on your on how he's going. Tell me what you felt with him today in this work.
He feels very good. He's a good horse. I think he's ready for the race. She worked excellent.
You've been getting over this surface many times. How was the surface today, the dirt surface?
It's good, Today is very good. The health doing good. I think it's better for the Breeders' Cup.
All right, well, we know you have a very busy morning. We'll let you go. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, guys.
All right, that's J.C. Diaz, and you can see he's hooked up. He's got his whip, his gloves, his radio, his helmet. He's got full gear on, guys.
And he's used to the radio. That's key. And I think what Bob said, you heard in Joaquin's interview with him, he said, I don't tell them too much. Say the work is 5/8. It's 59 seconds a minute. You don't want to be in their ear for 10 or 15 seconds. We wear them right here. And, we get some producers, I'm just saying, that say.
Not any producers on this show.
Not any producers on this show, but there are producers in television that when they give you instructions, when we're talking, it's in one long sentence. You want to be short, sharp, and concise, and that's exactly what Bob does there.
And we just want to recognize
we love everybody.
The efforts of John Moussis in what he does on our show each and every day. McKenzie now back at the barn and cooling out. When you look at the different jobs at a barn, and we've seen a little bit with Grooming Joaquin, our very special segment, everyone has a role, and several people will actually handle McKenzie on a day like today.
You have no idea how labor-intensive this business is. When I was training, I had a stable of anywhere between 40 and 70 horses in my peak, and I was employing at least that number or maybe more people than that. So the horse has a groom. He takes care of the horse. We saw him bring him out. Then he gets an exercise rider or a jockey in the case of apprentice rider J.C. Diaz. He's got an assistant trainer taking him out for the exercise. He then comes back, gets untacked by the groom, and the horse is handed off to the hot walker who's going to walk him for the next 45 minutes. So, everybody has their specific role, and it's run like a well-oiled machine. I mean, Bob has whatever he has, 55, 60 horses here. He only has the hours between, early morning and 10 a.m. to get them all out. And not every horse is going to go to the track every single day, but the majority of them will do some form of exercise. So it's got to be a well-oiled machine. And a trainer, and he'll tell you, Bob, any big trainer, you've got to have a good support staff because you need, efficiency. It's like any business. I mean, just because, it's horse racing, we've got to think about it like you would run a corporate business.
Yeah, it seems one certain position is a common denominator for the most successful barns is that assistant trainer.
Yep.
And Jimmy Barnes has been with Bob Baffert for a long time. You look at Doug O'Neill with Leandro Mora.
And he's got probably 2 or 3 foremen underneath him that are managing, the staff and the help. And Jimmy's overseeing all the day-to-day care of the horse. And then, it's like an organizational chart. It flows up to Bob. But the assistant trainer and the foreman have a key role in an operation like that.
And look, everyone's got an individual story how they came up in the sport, but I hear that a lot of time from younger people wanting to get involved at that level. How does a person go about becoming an assistant trainer and rising up through the ranks with any particular barn?
Let me tell you, if you want to get in this sport, you're not going to go knock on a trainer's door and become an assistant trainer, say, I'm here to do that. You got to start right at the bottom. I mean, this is harkening back to like the 40s or 50s when people underwent apprenticeships, in the trade industry. And that's what you have to do. You have to start right here by doing this, walking horses and then grooming and then being a foreman.
We'll continue to watch McKenzie as he cools out from his last major preparation for the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic, and we're getting you prepared for 2 championship days of racing, 2 of the best betting days throughout the entire year. Coming up this Friday and Saturday, TVG is the official wagering partner of the Breeders' Cup. Find out how you can get fee-free deposits. That's right, deposit money without fees and be playing the Breeders' Cup with America's Horse Racing Network, TVG. We'll be back with more Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup, presented by TVG, right after this. Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup continues live at Santa Anita, where Santa Anita will host the Breeders' Cup for a record 10th time this Friday and Saturday. We had a chance to go with Bob Baffert to the racetrack as McKenzie went out for his final workout. Joaquin Jaime asked him about his history at the Breeders' Cup with his 15 wins going all the way back to 30 slews, his first. He said, as special as that win was, so was the classic win by Arrogate over California Chrome here at Santa Anita. That is part of our look back.
They're off in the Breeders' Cup Classic. California Chrome and Arrogate both had great starts, and California Chrome goes right to the front. FNX on the inside is not far behind. And then it's Melatonin. Arrogate's going to sit off the pace. He's just to the outside of Frosted early on. He's 4 lengths off of California Chrome. And then it's Witness Space, Keen Eye's Opportunity, and War Story. The long shot is last as California Chrome runs past the stands for the first time and heads through an opening quarter mile of 23 1/5 seconds. California Chrome the leader. Melatonin sticks to him on the outside. Frosted rides the rail, and there goes Arrogate 3 wide, and now he takes third, and now he's only 2 lengths off of California Chrome. FNX is a close-up 5th, and it's 5 lengths to Keen Ice. Win the Space is next, and then Opportunity and War Story. The half mile was an easy one for California Chrome. 47 seconds flat. And Victor Espinoza and California Chrome head up the backstretch at Santa Anita, trying to complete this perfect season in the Breeders' Cup Classic. They've got a 2-length lead here. Melatonin is now a little bit farther behind than he was as California Chrome just gets away, moving for the far turn. Arrowgate is now 3.5 lengths off of his foe California Chrome, who has led every step of the way so far. Around the far turn, 3/4 up in 1:10 and 4. It has picked up a bit. And Victor Espinoza and California Chrome have a 2.5 length lead. And Mike Smith lets Arrowgate loose. And here he comes. He's going to try to make a race of it with a 1/4 mile to run. And they're into the stretch. And California Chrome comes roaring home with Arrowgate coming after him on the outside. A furlong to run. California Chrome put to the test. Arrowgate full out. Can he stick with it? California Chrome. Arrowgate still coming. California Chrome. Arrowgate steals the show in the Breeders' Cup Classic. He has defeated California Chrome under Mike Smith in his 25th Breeders' Cup score.
Larry Colmus capturing the moment, and what a moment it was. Our magnificent 7 moments we've been counting down in previous Breeders' Cups held here at Santa Anita. We started with Lady's Secret, her win in 1986, and the Distaff going on to Horse of the Year honors. The upset by our Kong. Goldacova, 3 TVG Breeders' Cup mile wins on the turf, and then Arrowgate's win in the Breeders' Cup Classic. So much was made of California Chrome and Victor Espinoza looking over his shoulder both directions, and what was Mike Smith going to do with Arrowgate, and some wondering, okay, should he have just opened up? The more I watch the replay, the more I realize they both had a fair chance down the stretch, and Arrowgate just proved to be better that day.
Yeah, he was. And, an exceptional horse. That was a great matchup. 3 top moments left. I've got a good feeling I know what one of them is going to be. Interesting to see what the other 2 are. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's a statue over here to remind us not far from our set. As we continue on here, leading to the 2019 Breeders' Cup, 2 days of racing with Future Stars Friday as a focus to start with the 2-year-olds, and so looking forward to the TVG Breeders' Cup Juvenile. That could lead, obviously, to next year's Kentucky Derby winner, and then the horse who may go on to the Breeders' Cup Classic in the following season. So much to like about what they're going to do on Friday with the youngsters.
Yeah, I like that. And I made that analogy earlier this week, in Major League Sports, like the Baseball Hall of Fame game and the NBA Hall of Fame game. They have the rookies play the day before, say on a Friday or on a Tuesday or on a Monday, and then the big game on Saturday in the case of the NBA. So I like that. I think the shift has been well received here. It used to be Philly Friday, right? We had all the Phillies races on Friday, but I like the way they're doing it now.
And then a huge Saturday to follow after that. We look forward to you coming out to Santa Anita to enjoy the Breeders' Cup. And remember, there are still tickets available, but don't delay. Get out here. It's going to be a perfect 2 days weather-wise, so expect a main track fast, a turf course firm, temperatures in the low 80s. The morning continues out here. Hog Creek Hustle, a horse that's risen through the 3-year-old ranks as a sprinter and likes to unleash a big late run normally. Hog Creek Hustle is, I think, an example of just, horses, you don't start out at the beginning of the year thinking, okay, when we get to the Breeders' Cup, this is a horse we're going to see in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, but Hog Creek Hustle has earned his way here. The Phoenix last time out didn't work out for him, but who could forget the big late runs that he made to win the Woody Stevens and then the big late run for second in the Alan Jerkins at Saratoga.
Yeah, well, with his running style, as we always say, he's going to be the victim of pace and the victim of trip. And it was a good effort, actually, in the Phoenix last time. First start against older horses. We saw Engage earlier this morning, and Engage was the winner of that race. He was only a length and a quarter behind him, but he's a deep closing sprinter. He's going to need pace to close into. He will get it. Don't get me wrong. He will get it in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. But, one, he needs a trip, and 2, is he good enough, even if he has that late run? This is a horse that might run second or third or fourth at a big number.
Right. It's like you said, there's all these concerns, trip, pace, and the rest of it. And then I think it's fairly obvious 6 furlongs is not his best distance. Right. So he's also having to shorten up a bit, and quite a bit, and then to do it against the best sprinters in the world. But, yeah, that's the great thing about the Breeders' Cup with the betting opportunities. It's not always the horse that wins. It doesn't have to be a mystery. It's horses like Hog Creek Hustle who show up in the number at a huge number.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a 7/8 specialist. You got to remember earlier this year, he was running 2 turns against War of Will and Country House.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
They're 2 winners, the first 2 jewels in the Triple Crown. I mean, he was 4th in the Risen Star behind them. So he's got the talent. I think 6.5, 7 is probably his ideal trip. Of course, he can't dictate what distance he's going to run up, but he will be running on late for maybe get a piece of the minor awards.
Hog Creek Hustle, son of Overanalyze, out of the Candy Ride mare Candy Fortune, bred in the Commonwealth of Kentucky and campaigned by Something Special Racing, trained by Vicky Foley. Taking a look at Graceful Kitten, who will be part of Future Stars Friday.
Runs in the turf. Look, left knee hitting the chin. I mean, it's that high knee action we talk about. Just a big old turf horse. Graceful Kitten. And hanging on that left lead there, but moving nicely over the track.
The Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, Graceful Kitten, last time out, and the Armed Forces at Gulfstream Park getting to win. It's been minor stakes races to this point. You never knock a horse with an undefeated record, but this is quite a step up for Graceful Kitten.
$8,500 purchase earlier this April is lining up for $1 million race. I mean, look, they've achieved a lot already. 3 for 3, undefeated, $120,000 in earning, but by Kitten's Joy, so gauntlet pedigree, and I definitely see why this horse is running on the grass with that action.
The Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf presented by Coolmore America. That'll be part of Future Stars Friday, and that race scheduled to go as race number 6. Later on today, scheduled is the post-position draw for all these Breeders' Cup races, and it's going to be some anxious moments for the connections, and we've got it all covered for you. Right before, we're also going to have a Breeders' Cup post-position draw preview show. That will be with Gabby Gaudette and Scott Hazelton, and we're also very happy to have Lafitte Pinkai III, along with our colleague at TVG, Brittany Erton, Nick Luck, coming from overseas. You're used to seeing Lafitte, Nick, and Brittany on NBC. Brittany calls TVG home throughout the year, but also works over at NBC. So it's very, this time of year, it's fun to bring all our colleagues together to bring you all the big events here at the Breeders' Cup. And one of the most anticipated will be the post-position draw. Look for that at 6:30 Eastern Time on TVG. And remember, you take that information, you can play at TVG.com, official wagering partner for the Breeders' Cup. You mentioned this earlier, the post-position draw as you see it. We asked everybody on our crew to look at the various races and point to a horse that you think needs a particular post position. Who were you looking at?
Yeah, there's 14 races, and I think there's 3 or 4 races in this slate that I think post position is key. I'm going to go with Paradise Woods. If you watched our programming yesterday, you saw how post position is going to be key for her. And in that regard, it's about getting dirt in her face. She doesn't like to be in behind horses. This was in the Clement Hirsch, we told you. She broke a step slow, and then she was sucked back after getting dirt in her face. I don't think she wants post position 1. John Sheriffs will not be happy if she's drawn down to the inside. So I think post position going to be key for her. And the break's key for her as well. It's all dependent on how fast she breaks out of the starting gate. So I think it's going to be a big factor for her and a couple of other races as well on Friday and Saturday.
Well, it's going to be fun at the post-position draw, those moments where you know the connections didn't get the post-position they want, and they have to paint it as positively as they can, but there will be some disappointing moments and maybe some elation just to get in the right spot at the post-position draw later today. Joaquin, what horses are you looking at as significant for the post-position draw?
I thought it'd be the horse that we just saw working out this morning here for Hall of Famer Bob Baffert. I'll make my first one McKenzie, and the reason I say that is I remember reading a quote from Mike Smith in the Daily Racing Forum a few weeks back before he was going into the Whitney, and Mike said, reflecting on the Ali Sheba stakes that we're taking a look at as they're going down the backstretch, that he just was not comfortable down on the inside. Now, in the Ali Sheba, he had post position number 1. Mike got him to the front going into the first turn, turning up the backstretch, he was still on the lead, but going down the backstretch, just going into about the 3/8 pole, he's going to go back to third. Tom's Duata is just to his outside and is eventually going to take the lead. And you can see Mike just sort of steadily working his way back. Doesn't drop too far out of it, but to go from the lead and then to go to third where he's at in this position, you can understand where he was saying he just wasn't very comfortable. Now, he's had post one at 1.25 miles at Santa Anita before. That was in the big cap. He just missed by a nose. He had post 2 in the Met Mile. Disaster trip. We know about that. In the Whitney, I remember Preservationist was to his outside, wasn't able to keep him in. Mike was able to get out, going down the middle of the racetrack, down the backstretch. And then the Awesome again, really no excuse for him. He was 3 wide, just second best to Mongolian Groom. Looking at McKenzie come down the stretch here in the Ali Sheba Stakes, this was the race that just sort of stuck out in my mind with that quote I remember reading in the Daily Racing Form where he said he just was not really comfortable down on the inside. So, Todd, for me, 1 is going to be McKenzie in the Breeders' Cup Classic. All group, I'll say 4 horses together in the Breeders' Cup Sprint because there is so much speed. But in particular, going for Mitole, Imperial Hint, Chancelot, and Landeskog. With so much speed signed on in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, if any one of those horses is, say, in post 1, 2, or 3, and a lot of the other horses are towards the outside, any one of those horses is going to be at a disadvantage. So all group, say 3 or 4 of those horses together, in particular, I'd say Mitole and Chancelot would probably be worse for them. But Breeders' Cup Sprint, a lot of speed towards the outside. You definitely don't want to be on the inside, Todd, going 6 furlongs.
Simon, is it a futile effort from a handicapping point of view and do post-position draw analysis for the Breeders' Cup? Because we're always at different racetracks normally.
Yes, it is. But I think from a handicapping standpoint, for these people that, look, you can have an opinion about a horse, but I think it's crazy to form it until the post positions are drawn, especially in some of the races we've been talking about. I mean, I think it can make or break certain horses' chances. And we've seen it with Bob Baffert. He talks about it all the time. I mean, he had a slew of inside post positions earlier this year in big races. So it's different from track to track, but you need to make your handicapping decision once the post positions are drawn.
Gabby, you're going to be with Ambassador Hazelton for the preview show of the post position draw. What horse are you concerned about as far as post position mattering?
Well, Todd, I really wanted to focus on the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and in particular 8 Rings because it's well documented from Bob Baffert, from several people, that he is very quirky. We saw him, of course, in the Del Mar Futurity, drop his rider, and then he came back in the American Pharoah. I'll talk about that race in just a moment. But in the American Pharoah, they did make an equipment change and they had an addition of blinkers here. So if you can see in my hand, this is the blinker that he wore last time out in the American Pharoah. He's going to wear it again in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. What makes this so interesting is that it's not very normal. You see, there's a big cutout here where most of my fingers can fit through this hole, and that just gives him the opportunity to see more things instead of being completely covered up. So they did add this on to him last time out in the American Pharoah. However, you go back to the beginning and we'll show you the pan shot of him breaking out of the gate. He completely takes a right-hand turn and takes out a couple of horses to his right. Now, I spoke to Johnny Velasquez yesterday, and he said that he blamed it more so on the assistant starter. He said he had a hold of his head once he let go, obviously, once the gates were open, but he was just kind of awkwardly positioned in the gate. So then it made him kind of break sideways coming out of the gate. That said, post position for 8 Rings. I think if he has an outside post position, I'm talking about the outermost post position or 2 from the very end, I think it could be problematic for him just because generally speaking, horses like to break into open spaces. With him, not only did he break outwardly in the American Pharoah, but he also had a tendency to lug out in both of his last 2 works in the gallop out. So it's something that Johnny Velasquez is really going to have to keep his attention on. Johnny, talking to him, he said he really wouldn't mind an inside post position just because, or even a middle post position, because it'll keep his attention to really move forward. He'll be able to use horses to his inside or his outside to help guide him forward. So it'll be interesting to see what 8 Rings does draw. But overall here, guys, I think it's going to be a really interesting juvenile. Even Maxfield, I talked to Brendon Walsh this morning because he doesn't get out of the gate very well. So I think even though the distance isn't very tricky, they have enough run going into the first turn. There are a couple of horses who have had gate issues before in the past.
Well, as we've watched throughout the mornings, there's so much time and effort, meticulous attention to getting these horses ready, and then there's an element of luck in our sport. And I've watched with Bob Baffert before at the Kentucky Derby. His horse will draw the rail, a horse like Looking at Lucky, and essentially it's over. I mean, that's got to be very disheartening. You go to the post position draw and you get a post that you're going to be up against it.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you get a bad post, you're up against it and your chances diminish, immensely. But then, you get over that, the 24 hours, and you think, okay, well, I've got the horse. Maybe you can overcome it. More often than not, they don't if something goes wrong at the gate. And within 3 to 4 seconds, as a trainer sitting in the stands, you can look down, and good horses can overcome it. And I'll go back to Arrogate in the Dubai World Cup. I was standing 3 feet next to Bob Baffert, and he literally said, it's time to go home, 2 seconds into the race. And then, good horses can overcome it. We've seen what that is. But, it's very, very tough. Post position, absolutely key in certain races here.
Michelle, you're going to be sticking around for that post position draw later. What are you going to be interested in?
Well, Todd, just to join the bandwagon, let's talk about another Bob Baffert horse. I think that the Dirt Mile is really the toughest race because of the short run into the first turn and having a full field. When you have a gate full of horses, that means the outside horses are going to be a little compromised. But Improbable going to be going in here, and this is one of the horses I found that, looking at all these replays, has gate issues, serious ones. Go all the way back to spring in the Arkansas Derby, and he threw a fit in the gate. And then you fast forward to the Preakness. Again, gets in the gate, throws an absolute fit. And even as recently as the Pennsylvania Derby, he was not standing still in the gate. So I think it's not the actual post position that he draws, but just the key to the gate load for him. You don't want to put him in early. Now, we do load 2x2 here at Santa Anita. So, one of those first post positions is not going to be a key one for him because he'll have to stand in there and then wait while everyone else gets loaded in. I talked to starter Jay Slender yesterday about this, and he said that Improbable has schooled several times at the gate in the mornings, but the difference between the morning and the afternoon is key because he could school all he wants in the mornings and be perfect, but when you come up in the afternoon, there's that added pressure. That's the, entertainment and the excitement and the energy of just the starting gate itself with all these horses ready to spring once the gates open. The assistant starter themselves are kind of leaning on the horse to try to keep them straight and down, and everyone, is super tense. So I think he's reacting in part to that just atmosphere in the starting gate, which you can't duplicate in the morning. But, preferably, I think if he draws, say, the 4, 5, or 6, that would really help him out as far as the load situation goes, because Jay said while they wouldn't like to load him first, he's not going to hang out last if he's supposed to be loading. So he's going to have to kind of go in where he's slated to, depending on draw. And also in this race, like I said, because of the short run into the turn, I would be a little concerned about where Omaha Beach draws. While people don't necessarily want to draw the rail, I do not think Mandela would be jumping up and down and pumping his fist should Omaha Beach draw the very far outside in the Dirt Mile, guys.
I have to tell you, that was not the matchup that I was focusing in on coming to this Breeders' Cup, but that's what I love about the show. As the morning has played out, you listen to the connections. Bob Baffert is supremely confident and Improbable. Obviously, we know the story of Omaha Beach. That, to me, is going to be an awesome showdown in the big-ass Breeders' Cup Mile on the Dirt.
And to echo Michelle's point there, I think post-position key in that race, not so much for Improbable, but it's his antics at the gate and that outside draw with that short run into the first turn. You do not want to be hung up 11, 12 wide going into that first turn, losing a ton of ground. I'm looking forward to that matchup. Like you said, we've always talked about the classic matchup. Yeah. Midnight Bisou is a headliner. We talked about it late and McKenzie in the classic. But this could be head-to-head outside of the juvenile. Dennis's moment, Maxfield, 8 Rings. This could be the best matchup of the weekend.
And you could be here watching it in person. Tickets are still available for both Friday and Saturday, and want to highlight some of the areas where you could get supreme spots. There are tickets available in the front runner, Clocker's Corner, where we've been showing you each and every morning. What a beautiful view there as the field turns for home. And don't forget about the marquee tickets available on Saturday, both front runner, grandstand general admission with access. This has been a unique layout here. The Zenyatta, Peacock, Paddock, and Infield. Again, all these tickets are at breederscup.com. Come out and see it for yourself. 2 championship days of racing, the Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita this Friday and Saturday.
And now into the stretch, and American Pharoah has a 4-length lead. FNX is second, and then it's Frosted, Totalist, and Undercode. American Pharoah comes into his final furlong, and he's got a 6-length lead as they come to the wire. A Triple Crown winner, a Breeders' Cup winner, a horse of a lifetime.
American Pharoah, the only horse to complete the Grand Slam, that is win the Triple Crown and then the Breeders' Cup Classic that year. And American Pharoah is off to a fantastic start as a sire. Here is the latest example. Sweet Melania, who was the first lady in the Grade 2 Jessamine. She won easily there, taking that race at Keeneland by 6 lengths. And a lot of people walked away going, this is a horse I'm going to play in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf on Future Stars Friday. I know I'll be using Sweet Melania.
Well, she has tactical speed. She's a neck away from being undefeated on the turf. And as many American Pharoahs we've seen this year, they improve when they get on the grass, or at least they start their career on the grass. This one started on the dirt and ended up being better on the turf. And first time we've seen Sweet Melania on this show, jogging the wrong way there. Hitting on all 4 cylinders.
I'm going for trainer Todd Pletcher. But what about the subject of American Pharoah and his progeny? It's been interesting since the very beginning. A lot of his progeny were seen on the turf, but
look at that.
A lot of the success overseas.
Yeah, look at this, though. 4 entrants, they're all grass races. Who would have predicted that at the end of 2015? Of course, he never stepped foot on the grass. He might have been as good, if not better, on the turf had he been on there. But first season sire here, 4 offspring in the Breeders' Cup, so well represented, but not surprising. You got a champion horse who's getting supported by the best mares in the world, so you expect some good runners here. And Princess Caroline for Chad Brown, or Princessa, as some people like to call her.
It depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah.
American Pharoah passing down his greatness as a stallion. Snapper Sinclair is going in the TVG Breeders' Cup Mile on the grass.
And cross-headed in the dirt mile as well. But
yeah.
One would think that the turf mile, right?
I think ultimately. But another example, how Jeff Bloom has had a very good year. Aside from Midnight Bisou, Snapper Sinclair has put together a lot of success.
Yeah, and again, as you mentioned, Jeff Bloom. I mean, what a situation. He's got Midnight Bisou. That would be enough. But Snapper Sinclair, useful horse. He's won 2 out of his last 3 starts. One was on the dirt last time out on the grass, and it's the first time he'd been on the grass in quite some time. He has a very good record on the turf. He was 3 wins from 5 starts. One of those was in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf 2 years ago at Del Mar. And you can see why he's better on the turf as well. Again, a horse with, a little higher action than most dirt horses we're used to seeing here.
Okay, now I've always agreed with that, the stride, and I can see what you're talking about. And I've seen it with horses that you've pointed out. Boy, put this horse on the grass and they'll be better, and then they do. But I hear so much, one thing's going all the way back is that the conformation of a horse's hoof leads to them being better on the grass versus the dirt, and then if you have larger round hooves, that's
like
a turf
plates,
hoof.
Yeah.
And I've met some very respected trainers over the years who said there's nothing to that. Some of my best grass horses had the tiniest feet. What about their hooves and how it relates to being on the turf?
I don't buy it.
Yeah,
I don't buy it.
That's where I am too.
I think sometimes it's a coincidence, and I think I know where the thinking comes from. That Mr. Prospector, one of the greatest sires and racehorses of all time. The dirt horses back in the day had their feet were like little deer feet. And,
he was a pure sprinter, and yet he sired some of the greatest grass horses in the world.
Exactly. So I don't buy it. Absolutely not. That's fake news.
Yeah, it definitely is a truism, though. Their stride can lead to being very efficient on the turf versus the dirt. Snapper Sinclair.
I'm not going to a yearling sale and picking up a feet and saying, in a couple of years, this was going to be. I mean, I'm looking at pedigree, I'm looking at conformation, and once they get out of that yearling stage and into moving their gait, I think that's more telling.
And here at the Breeders' Cup, they've got it all. The best in the world are assembled here at Santa Anita for a record 10th time. Santa Anita will host the Breeders' Cup this Friday and Saturday. Emerging stars amongst the thoroughbred athletes and also the jockeys. But every jockey has an agent behind their success. You'll meet one of those agents, the agent of Flavian Pratt, when we return.
Welcome back to Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup, live from Santa Anita Park, the home to the Breeders' Cup this Friday and Saturday. And this is Donna Veloce, one of the key contenders in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, coming up on Friday, galloping earlier this morning. And she will be ridden by Flavian Pratt, one of the leading riders across the country and definitely on the West Coast here, and made a big name for himself the last 2 years or so. And for more on Team Pratt, let me introduce you to his agent, Derek Lawson.
First of all, you ride for your clients that you've been riding for all year long, if they have horses that are Breeders' Cup eligible and that you believe that can win a Breeders' Cup race. Because there's $34 million that's being distributed over 2 days, and Flavienne and I, we want a piece of that action. So anyway, Breeders' Cup is upon us. That's him right there. Who are we working right now? G. Oh, okay. You know, the fun part of this game for myself, obviously winning is what we're here to do, but just to be able to watch the development of Flavienne as a rider, because sometimes he does things on the back of a horse, and I think to myself, how the hell did he win that race, you know?
Hello.
Yeah, Ron, Derek Lawson, Flavienne Pratt's agent. How are you?
Fine.
Whitmore, are you set with a rider? Because we're opening the Breeders' Cup Sprint. I'm just making a call to see if you might be able to use us in that race. Right now, what I'm trying to do is the races that we don't have a mount, I'm speaking with other trainers and let them know that we are open in those races. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. The distaff, I've reached out to Tom Amos for Serengeti Empress. He'll get back to me, but he told me don't make a move to hang tight there. So that would be good. I mean, Serengeti Empress would be awesome for us to, because we did lose Secret Spice. Now, getting taken off of Breeders' Cup horses, yeah, it's not fun. But then the idea for me is to say, okay, fine, you don't want us. Now I'm going to try and find a horse to beat you. I've got Simon at 7:45, and then we can come over and get you right at 8:30. Okay? All right, super. All we discussed basically is horses that we could possibly ride, horses where we might be in trouble, where we have two horses in one race, and then we try and make the decision on which one we're going to ride. No, he's not in here. Sorry. He's hiding from us. I know he's doing this on purpose. Did Jockey walk by? Good morning, Daryl. How are you?
Everything's good.
All right. A little update. 3 open, but total of 11 mounts so far. Whitmore, the pre-entries came out. His preference is the sprint, so we're going to wait and see. I'll probably give him another day. Hit the road for Dan Blacker in the juvenile grass race. Flavienne will be riding him in the Breeders' Cup as well. Come on, Flavienne. Once I'm done here in the morning with Flavienne, once he leaves, I'll head on home, clean up, and then come on back to the races, and hopefully watch Flavienne win 2, 3, or 5 races a day, however he's riding. I wait with him afterwards. We discuss what happened during the day. I let him know who his workers are in the morning, and then we do it again. You know, trust me, this is not rocket science. Even Todd Schrupp could do this job.
Wow, Todd Schrupp could do. I'm not sure about that because you have to get up early in the morning. It's a struggle for him to get here for breakfast at the Breeders' Cup. So Derek Lawson doing a great job for Flavienne Pratt, and he's been his agent over the last several years in Southern California. This is a live show, of course, and we're monitoring a lot of breaking news. And for more breaking news surrounding the Breeders' Cup, let's check in with Gabby Gaudet right now. Gabby, what you got?
Simon, thank you. Well, it was just recently reported on Twitter just about 6 minutes ago from Racing Post, at Racing Post on Twitter, that Magical will not travel to the Breeders' Cup per Aidan O'Brien. Of course, Magical was pre-entered in both the filly and mare turf and the turf, but I'm just going to read this tweet from Aidan O'Brien directly tweeted by the Racing Post. Magical spiked a slight temperature this morning, so she hasn't traveled to America. She has been an unbelievable mare. She was so game, so consistent, and so classy. The Racing Post also stating that she will be retired with immediate effect. So obviously big news. That was the news on Twitter, but we will shortly get official word from some Breeders' Cup representatives and officials here soon. Some other words here, as some other news as well, guys. I just spoke to Ignacio Correas in regards to Walk in Marrakesh, and he did say that she didn't ship as well as he had hoped for. She got off the van, and she seemingly tied up, and she was just not moving as well behind. So she will not be entered in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf. She will be scratched in that race, but all is well with Blue Prize. He said she could not be doing better after the ship here to Santa Anita. Simon?
Thanks very much, Gabby. And that is some late-breaking news. You heard it here via the Racing Post Twitter account. Magical out of the Breeders' Cup. That's a huge scratch. He was one of the marquee European names scheduled to come here this week for Aidan O'Brien, coming off that victory in the Champions Stakes. So she has been retired with a fever, a temperature, can't get on the plane with that. So that race, or at least the filly mare turf now, has just got even easier for Sister Charlie. Walking Marrakesh out of the Juvenile Cup fillies turf, as you heard there from Gabby Godet. Track maintenance in progress, so it is break time here on Breakfast of the Breeders' Cup. When we come back, we'll head into our final hour here and have more QA at the Cup. Stick around.
Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup continues. We appreciate your support watching this program. Judging by your reaction, you're getting a lot out of it. Knowledge that you can use to play both Friday and Saturday, 2 championship days of racing. We've been asking for your questions, and you have responded. Use the hashtag QA at the Cup. QA at the Cup. We're going to get back into some of your questions once again.
One of the QAs at the Cup was about the pony horses that accompany their horses to the racetrack. And, you know, the out-of-town people, some of them choose to bring their own, including Steve Asmussen's barn. This is Randy's news flash, or they like to call him around the barn Red. He's a retired racehorse, and he accompanies all of the Asmussen horses. I asked Scott, why bring your own when there's plenty of ponies that live here at Santa Anita? And he said it's because his horses know this horse, and that leads a certain comfort level. So this is Randy, or Red, and he accompanies all of the Asmussen horses to the racetrack.
Very good. And, you know, you look at pony horses like Harley as an example at Keeneland. They all have reputations. People seek out certain pony horses in the afternoon.
And the good thing here about Santa Anita, just to the right of us, a lot of the pony horses and the horses that take, we don't have more often than not, you'll see racing officials taken to their various positions around the racetrack in a car or an van. Here we have a horse and carriage, and those horses are based right to our right here, and the public can come and access them, not touch them and feed them, but they can come and view them, and they're stabled right here in the paddock.
Imperial Hent has come from the East Coast to the West to take on some of the best in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and we find out more how his travels have gone.
Well, Todd, his travels went great, but it was more of a Simon Bray type travel day for Imperial Hint. He's back at the Doug O'Neill barn. He arrived yesterday morning. He's been here. He's not going to go to the track today. He'll just be relaxing all afternoon. And one of the reasons is because of his itinerary to get here. I was just back at the barn right now, had a chance to catch up with trainer Luis Carvajal. He started at Monmouth Park. He vanned from Monmouth Park to Long Island. He flew out of Long Island, went to Kentucky, had a bit of a layover there while they refueled, got some other horses aboard the plane. Then from Kentucky is when he flew to California. So when it was all said and done for Imperial Hint, Luis told me that he left Monmouth, left New Jersey at 2 a.m. and then arrived yesterday about noon West Coast time here at Santa Anita. So a long travel day for Imperial Hint, so you can understand that he's not going to be able to go to the track today. Luis told me that Imperial Hint should be able to hit the track tomorrow. When we look at Imperial Hint, I mean, this is no doubt a main contender in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. He's been in the Breeders' Cup Sprint the last 2 years. At Del Mar a couple years ago, he was second. Last year at Churchill Downs, he was third. 2 starts back, he set a track record at Saratoga, and then most recently, he is coming off a hard-fought victory, battling back against Firenze Fire in the Vosburg. So Imperial Hint, he is trying to make it 3 consecutive Grade 1 wins, and he is here. He's arrived. He's at Santa Anita, bedded down at the Doug O'Neill barn.
And his most significant one is the fact that he has already proven he can beat the favorite, Mitole. Mitole expected to be the favorite in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, but Imperial Hint was awesome when he defeated him at Saratoga. We got more to come here on Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup. A reminder, TVG is the official wagering partner of the Breeders' Cup, and a great offer for TVG account holders. It's the money back special, but remember, you have to be a TVG account holder. If you haven't done that yet, go to tvg.com/promos to find out more. Monday morning continues at Santa Anita. The renovation break coming up, and then a new set of horses will be coming out onto the track. A lot has taken place. Hope you joined us earlier when we took you behind the scenes. McKenzie preparing for the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic. Bob Baffert giving us full access prior to that workout, during that workout, and after that workout. There's no doubt your expected favorite for the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic, McKenzie, is ready. You're watching Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup, live in Arcadia, California. I'm Todd Schrupp, along with Simon Bray, and a full team of reporters from the backside to trackside, taking you everywhere you need to be. And you need to be here at Santa Anita, one of the most gorgeous facilities anywhere in the world. As part of our program, we've been taking you behind the scenes and helping you learn more about what goes on each and every day at racetracks across America. And one of the best segments is Grooming Joaquin.
Briefly how to put on a pony. This is something that takes a lot of practice. You're never going to get it right the first, second, 10th go, 15th go, 20th go.
Why is it so difficult?
It's not difficult. It's just it's important. There are right ways to do it, there are safe ways to do it, and there are unsafe ways to do it. If an bandage comes off while a horse is training, and they step on it, they can fall down. So it's super dangerous, and it's something that's really important to get right. Always want to start square to the leg, so the horse's hoof is pointing that way. So right where I am. So we're going to go always that way and always the outside. Okay. So we start at the top, just below the knee. Tuck it around. And then we're going to do 2 rounds before going around the ankle.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, then we're going to go 2 rounds around the joint here. We're going to make a little V. So we go down, around and come back up. And you see we make that V here?
So this is the V.
Yeah, this shape right here.
Here's the B.
Yeah. So then we're going to do another lap. So we've done 2 rounds around the fetlock. We got our nice V there. It looks pretty.
That's what that bottom bone is. That's the fetlock.
This is the fetlock joint.
Okay.
Yeah. So then we kind of come back. So we're on 2 times around the ankle, and you want to keep it tight. You don't want it loose. If it's loose, then it comes off, but you don't want it like so tight that it's like cutting off the blood supply. You know. So you want it like tight. You want to feel like how tight I'm holding it there.
Okay.
So you want to just keep it all the time. And then when you come in, you want an even spacing between each round.
Okay.
Like that. As I said, there's lots of little things. It looks simple when you see someone do it, but it's
more difficult than it actually looks.
Yeah, there's a lot of... And then we'll put some tape around that, a couple rounds of tape to make sure that doesn't come off from there. Okay. That's a really snug polo. Okay. You want to have a go? Let's see how hard it is, yeah.
Okay.
Wow, look at that. First attempt. Tell you, Joaquin, you are wasted at TVG. What are you doing? You could be a groom.
The little things that we take for granted, you don't even think, well, how did that happen? How did it come to be? But that's what you talked about. There's so many roles in a barn, and everyone's got to do their job properly.
It's the most important part. Dan emphasized it there, putting on those bandages, because if one comes off, I mean, it can, a horse can fall down. It can cause a big accident. So you've got to do exactly right. It was a perfect example. It did pretty good for the first time. Might have taken a little while, but can you imagine if you're a groom, you're taking care of 3 or 4 horses, you've got to get 4 horses bandaged up, take them off, and then apply a bandage to the other 3 horses as well. So you got to know what you're doing, and it takes a lot of experience, a lot of repetitions to do that.
Training hours continue here at Santa Anita. As we said, they're out grooming the racetrack, as it were, so that track maintenance taking place. Meanwhile, on the backside, the routine continues. Horses coming off the track and getting ready for the rest of their day. We'll be getting back on the track when breakfast at the Breeders' Cup presented by TVG returns. Speaking of a 24-hour job, being a track maintenance supervisor.
Oh, no question about that. They're up early in the morning, sometimes 3 a.m. And, they're monitoring, they're part weatherman, at least in most jurisdictions across the country. Here, you don't have to worry about it too much. But, yeah, it's a full-time job because they're doing this, and then they're coming back this afternoon for all the racing action as well.
So many roles at the racetrack. Michelle Yu tells us about another one.
Got some more of the Q&A at the Cup coming in, and this one is from Nikki Wallace, who says, let's talk shoes. I'm guessing you're not talking about the Louboutins that we'll be wearing to the races. So how far out from race day do trainers typically put new plates on their horse? I found Farrier to the Stars, Robert Treasure, who's going to answer that question for me. What's the answer?
Everybody has their own preference. Some guys like to do it on race day. Some guys like to do it 2 days before, and most 5 to 7 days out.
And would that really just be if the horse is a little bit more sensitive to it, or just because they want like a fresh set that has a really good grip on it?
Well, I think most of the time you would want a newer set of shoes, not maybe one that's 30 days old, but one that's within 2 weeks old. And your toe grabs are a little longer. If you're on the dirt, shoes just in a little better shape.
Every time you put a new set on, just say they do it race day, does that necessarily mean they're getting their feet trimmed as well? Or could you just put a new set of shoes on and keep their feet as is?
You could just put a new set of shoes on, use the old nail holes, but generally you'd want to trim just a little bit off, not a lot, but so where you got a fresh nail and some fresh wall, just because it's stronger that way.
I remember doing a package one time on shoes. There's like 100 different kinds of shoes that you can use. What's the most popular that people are going to be using on race day?
Here, probably either a Queen's Plate XT in front or a low toe in front and a plain toe behind. And on the grass course, it's just Queen's Plate XT. That's all we allow here.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Robert.
Yeah, you got it.
Guys?
And Simon, so many ways to attach a shoe. There are sometimes glue-ons. What do you think of glue-on shoes?
I think they're great. They certainly have a place in racing, and they've been developed tremendously over the last several years. He was talking about nail holes there. For most people, most horses have their shoes nailed onto their feet. It sounds painful. There's absolutely no pain at all. So they hammer the nail into the wall of the hoof there. Well, there's no nerve endings. There's no blood supply. It's just like hammering it into, a piece of dead nail finger. Sometimes those horses' hoof walls are very thin. You don't have the ability to drive a nail into that wall without causing, pain or infection. So we glue the shoes on, and they've been used a lot, especially some very, very big horses. And major names have had glue-on shows the last couple of years. You won't even know. The public probably doesn't even know half the time, but the blacksmith is an integral part of, the horse trainer and the horse itself. And you heard about the different times that they shoe the horse, whether it's 5 days before or even 1 day before.
What do you think about glue-on shoes? What do you think? Anything? Nothing? Okay.
No.
All right. So many roles at the track, including cutting the lawn right by our set right there.
No, you're fine. Carry on. He was like, yeah, good. That's good.
That's good. I thought he was coming up on the set. Yeah. Papers were going to start going.
Yeah.
It has been a lot of fun in the mornings to get to know everyone, and no better way than over a cup of coffee. Our Breeders' Cup of Coffee segment this day is with trainer Brendon Walsh.
Welcome to another edition of Cup of Coffee here at Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup. I'm Gabby Gaudette and happy to be joined by trainer Brendon Walsh, who of course will be sending out Maxfield in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but also has Vitalogy. We'll talk about those, but first, how's your morning going?
So far so good. It's a little too early for anything major to go around, Gabby, but we're here. The horses seem like they're doing good, so can't ask for more than that.
Well, before we get into the horses, I want to backtrack to the beginning. And what was it like growing up in Cork, Ireland, for you?
I grew up on a farm, my small farm, and we had kind of cows and sheep and some crops and stuff. So my dad worked us pretty hard, I mean, he worked I won't say what out of us, but but not in a bad way. He was always very good to us, and but we didn't have any horses. But I was like from the get-go, I don't know why, but I was obsessed with horses. I'd hear a horse, back then the roads were so quiet in Ireland. Horses would go by all the time hacking, and I'd hear them. I'd be running out to the gate, trying to talk to the guys riding them. I was just, I don't know, what it was, but I was just obsessed with them from the get-go. So I remember when I was 8 years old, my dad won money in a raffle, and he bought me my first pony with the money. So I'll never forget like going to see the pony and picking him up. And of course we didn't have a clue about horses. I mean, no idea. You know, I think the first time he went to put the saddle on him, he put it on the wrong way around. I'll never forget that. And I was like, I don't think that's right. So,
oh, wow.
But, you know, we were kind of self-taught. Of course, the pony ran off with me for 2 years and dumped me every other day. But like Dad always said, he said, you know, you must have been really into it, because he said, I remember one of my sisters fell off him one day. That was it. She was done. So it was great, because then it was all mine. But
you never gave up.
No, and we actually turned him into a good jumping pony. He was a decent pony by the time we were finished with him. But then after that, you know, I was just, you know, it was always going to be what I was going to do. So when I was 15, I went to the apprentice school in Ireland for a short while. Got terribly.
Didn't it last long?
No,
okay.
No. Lasted about 3-4 months. Got very homesick. I mean, I was 15. I weighed like, what did we say, 80 pounds?
66
yeah,
pounds.
I mean, I was really tiny back then. And, you know, all the bigger guys on the course, they were onto them, oh, you know, you need to keep a little watch on your weight and all that. Me, they were trying to shove food into me to try and beef me up a little bit. But no, so that was the start, yeah. But we had a great youth, you know, it was fantastic. I mean, you couldn't have been brought up better. We were always working, always into sports, always kept active, and you know, my parents were great. They were really good to us.
So one of your first experiences was working for Godolphin, and what was that like? What were you an assistant? Were you an exercise rider? What was that time like for you?
Well, what happened was I went to Dubai one year. We were at Sheikh Mohammed's farm in Ireland, Kildangan, where I worked for 3-4. They used to break a ton of horses. All of his horses that went to Europe, to various trainers in Europe, they were broken, pre-trained in Kildangan first. So I was there, and then the Godolphin thing started to happen, where they would take the 3 Maktoum brothers' best horses, basically, at the end of every year. They might pull some from trainers, and they wanted to bring them all back in Dubai. So there wasn't maybe 50, 60 horses. But we brought the first yearlings, coming 2-year-olds to Dubai, and I was lucky enough to go over with them, and they needed somebody up in Alquaz in the main barn to gallop some horses, because guys were on vacation and stuff. So I went up, I got to meet Saeed, got to meet Tommy. Tommy Albertrani was Saeed's assistant at the time, and we kind of got on well. And about 18 months later, they were looking for somebody to go to Newmarket for the summer, so I went, you know, and I ended up staying there for 7 years, I think, just as a rider first, and then I kind of wanted to do a little more, so Tommy kind of pushed me up, and I was eventually, I guess you'd call it, a foreman, Gabby.
I'll just list a couple of the horses that you had experience with Godolphin, Daylami, Fantastic Light, Dubai Millennium. I mean, the list goes on and on, but what was it like to, you know, go to be around these wonderful animals that were just,
it was overwhelming, you know. It was like you were awestruck. I remember finding an old barn list a few months ago at home when I was going through some stuff, and like the horses were, I mean, the worst horse there they were all stakes winners basically. Yeah. So it was like overwhelming, and I mean, every time, you know, back then the Royal Ascot, we'd have 5-6 winners. You were expected to have that every Royal Ascot. Everywhere you went, you were going to win, or you were going to finish in the first 3 unless something really went wrong. And you know, it was fantastic. It was just so nice to be around some really, really good horses, and they were great people to work for. And I, you know, as the years went on, we traveled the world with them. You know, I went to Hong Kong with them. I went to Singapore for them multiple times. I went all over Europe with horses. So it was a big responsibility, but it was a great experience.
What was the story about the Tisnow Classic? I know you have something funny about that.
I remember, so it was the year that the Breeders' Cup was at Belmont, and I think it might have been the year of 9/11, if I'm not mistaken, or was that the year with Giants Causeway?
No, it was.
It was Saki and
yeah.
And you know, Owen Harty ran his 2-year-old filly. She was a real good filly. I forget her name right now, but Owen ran her earlier. But we were all high on Fantastic Light and Saki, so we'd all bet these doubles in Newmarket where you put money on like £100, and I think Fantastic Light was like 6-1 or 5-1, and then when it wins you don't get paid, it rolls over. There's a name for it here as well. So we all stood to win a fortune if Saki won, and of course we're in a bar in Newmarket, as
Sounds
you do.
About right.
Yeah, there's a gang of us. There must have been 20 or 25 of us, and they turned for home, and Saki looked all over the winner at the head of the straight. We were screaming. Unfortunately, Tisnow ran him down and beat him. I mean, it was one of the great classics of all time, maybe. But there was a lot of. We weren't disappointed because Fantastic Light had won, but you know, we'd have all been
made a little bit more money.
Been rich, yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. I'm sure you have so many more stories. But now shifting gears, I mean, what made you come to America? And I don't want to speed it up because there's so much that has gone on in between, you know, your time working for Godolphin and even Mark Wallace and Eddie Keneally. But those initial months when you decided to go out on your own, what was that like?
Listen, it was always something I was going to do, Gabby. You know, and I had a chance to round up like 5 or 6 horses, and you know, I said, you know, maybe it's time to take a shot on my own. You know, I mean, I was, you know, mid-30s, which, you know, you still call it a young, but a lot of guys start when they're in their 20s. You know, so I said I kind of had the shot to round up like a half dozen horses, and I thought that's ideal for me. I can do most of the work myself, and so I went ahead and you know, we put together. I remember I put together some equipment and stuff like that, and you know, I just went on with it. And I mean, it was daunting, but you know, I was able to do it. Like I said, I was able to do a lot of the work myself. So I think I had a groom, and I did the hot walking myself for about 3 days, and then I thought I need a hot walker.
I'm at least going to pay one person to do something in the barn. You can't do everything.
No. So we started off with that, and the first couple of years, as you'll see on my stats, they were tough. You know, I mean, it's a very tough thing to do, and I mean, anybody that ever knocks anybody who doesn't quite make it, I think it's totally wrong, because at least they had the balls to try and make it, you know.
Yeah.
You know, because it's tough, and you know, if you're lucky, you can make it. If you work hard at it, you can make it. But I've seen a lot of people that work hard at it and they just don't get the breaks, and you know, for one reason or another, they end up that they've got to quit again, and it's, you know, so it's a very, very hard thing to do. So you know, I think anybody that even tries it should be given a lot of credit.
I totally agree, and even the balance between management, money management, and horsemanship. I mean, it's probably one of the most difficult things to balance altogether. Fast forward, you know, and now you're here you got your first grade 1 with Max Fields for Godolphin. What is that like this year to come to the Breeders' Cup with, you know, the potential favorite or second choice for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile?
I mean, it's what everybody dreams about, Gabby, you know. I was thinking about it the other day, especially a horse like him. You know, listen, a good horse can come along any time in your career, but, you know, I'm not at it that long, so to have a good horse, I think he's come at a very good point in my career. You know, it's what I really want. I'm not one of these guys that wants to have 150 horses all over the country and that, you know. I'd like to keep it at a manageable number where, you know, I've got 2 very good assistants. You know, we try to be, I'm very hands-on myself. I like to be around the horses and see, you know, so it's nice to have him and to, you know, just to raise the bar with quality more than anything. You know, I was very lucky to have Godolphin come on board this year. And, you know, not just them, but I've got some other really nice owners now as well. Like Vitality with Qatar, Cheyenne. To name a few, David Ross, a bunch of other really good owners. Not to single out anybody, but at least it gives you a good chance to get a horse like Maxfield or like Vitality. And that's what we want.
And you're a tremendous horseman, and I just want to ask, I know we have to wrap up here, but I want to ask, what are these two horses like? How do they compare and contrast? What's Maxfield like and what's Vitality like?
They've both got a lot of class. They both handle themselves really well. They handle the travel here really well. They seem to take everything in their stride. Maxfield's a big horse. I mean, he's a big, pretty-looking horse. He stands out. The other guy's he's a smaller, physical, but he's got a great mind too. And I have massive admiration for him because he's after coming from Ireland to Canada, back down to us. He runs his heart out every time. You love horses like that, no matter whether they're graded stake horses or 10 grand claimers. So they're both actually really easy to be around. They handled, yesterday was their first day here. They handled it all really well, and so I couldn't ask for them to be doing better. So we're excited about the weekend.
You seem very relaxed. This was an absolute joy and pleasure to be joined by you this morning. Thank you so much for the time, Brendon.
Thank you.
All right, that's another edition of Cup of Coffee. So much fun this morning at breakfast at the Breeders' Cup.
In a sport that is statistics heavy, it's nice to have an opportunity to actually get to meet the people behind the statistics, and what went into a career to get to this point. Brendon Walsh, a great example of what you've been seeing on that.
This weekend is the biggest moment of his career thus far, and apart from the day he took out a trainer's license. This, I think, could define how his career could go forward. I mean, the trajectory has been great thus far. And the good thing about training in North America, that's why a lot of Europeans, a lot of Irish English come here. You can start with one horse, a feed tub, and a webbing and get started. He alluded to that in the interview. In Europe, you need to buy or lease a stable, a barn, and a yard to work out of. The overhead is much more expensive, but a horse like Maxfield could really project him. The fact that he's got supported by Godolphin, and that goes back to his association working with him for a long time. You see, I mean, he's trained for a long time, but now they've supported him. This could be a real difference making a young early on in his career. Similar to Chad Brown, he won with Moram in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf early on in his career.
Well, you said, and you heard in the conversation, Brendon saying, when you look at Maxfield, he stands out. Physically, he's imposing. He came by our set earlier this morning. You've liked what you've seen in the mornings. You've liked what you've seen in the afternoons. What about what you saw up close?
I mean, it was unbelievable. It's as close as I've been to him this morning. I've seen him at a distance. I saw him yesterday, but when he walked by, I mean, he could be running in the Classic or the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. There's no question about that. But, yeah, this is a big moment for him. Interesting to see how he came to get Maxfield, because Brendon's not a big name. I mean, what were the decisions in going to him rather than to a Baffert or to, a Richard Mandela or a Bill Mott? He's well supported.
When we come back, we check in at the Dry Erase Board. Yeah, that's where they put up the official clockings for the Breeders' Cup horses that have been out this morning. And Michelle Yu has been helping out in that process. We'll bring you her report when Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup, presented by TVG, continues right after this.
I am Miles Feld, and I'm a cameraman for TVG. When I was probably like 3 or 4, I would go with my dad to the barn. He trained horses for like 20 plus years in Southern California. I can remember like writing him notes before I went to bed to make sure that he would wake me up and take me to the track in the morning. And then as I got older, I became more of a fan of the sport in general and a fan of the animals because they're just so majestic and beautiful. And the peace of mind that comes with looking at a horse where you feel like you're connected with it, that you have this mental capability to just completely observe nature. For the family, it's been a way for us to keep in touch, to stay together. I love doing this job because I'm not at a desk and it's out in nature and you get to be amongst really cool people and awesome animals, and I'll take this any day of the week. I am horse racing.
And we at TVG, what does that look? What are you doing there, Miles? We at TVG are fortunate to have employees like Miles. He is just one of those people that you look forward to coming to work because you know he's there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Great attitude. And his dad, was a successful trainer on this circuit for a long time. Pope Jude, check him out, popejude.com. That's his website.
Miles, thank you for all your great work. You are horse racing. You are, our audience, a big reason why we're here, and we're also learning together, especially with our Q&A at the Cup. We have more of your questions now.
Scribe 99 Brian wants to know, what's the main track at Santa Anita made of? Well, it's made of El Segundo sand. There's actually a city nearby the airport called El Segundo, and when they were excavating in order to build the airport, and they made this quarry, and this is where this sand comes from. So that is what the whole Santa Anita main track is made out of, and that's what we'll be running on at Breeders' Cup.
Coming in on Twitter, make sure you use that hashtag QA at the Cup. This one is regarding international runners. They're asking, has there ever been an Australian-based horse to run in the Breeders' Cup? Short answer is no, but it's a little bit tricky. Appreciate Candace Hare doing our international research back there in the TVG studios. So no, but there are 3 formerly based Australian horses that have. Here's what I mean by that. 1984-1985, Strawberry Road started his career in Australia, then came to the States and competed in the Breeders' Cup Turf for Charlie Whittingham. In 2011, same thing was So You Think. Started in Australia, then moved to the barn of Aidan O'Brien and ran in the 2011 Breeders' Cup Classic. And then the following year, another similar situation for Aidan O'Brien. He had Star Spangled Banner, who ran in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. Star Spangled Banner competed in Australia before moving to Aidan O'Brien's yard. So technically the answer is no for has there been any Australian-based horses to run in the Breeders' Cup. Still plenty of time left in the show to participate. Make sure you use the hashtag QA at the Cup.
And look, Australian horses have come over, particularly to Southern California, and done very well. I'm surprised we don't see more with the Breeders' Cup. Is it the timing of it?
I think it's the timing of it. You know, they have the championship races down there with the Melbourne Cup Festival coming up. We just had the Caulfield Cup. So, yeah, it's timing. We've seen success at Royal Ascot. I think it's a little better timing for them to go over in June to Europe. So, I mean, I'd like to see somebody show up here, for, at least in one of the turf sprint races.
Field horses coming out onto the track after the renovation break out here at Santa Anita, and we'll keep looking for significant horses. And here is one such horse, Dennis's Moment. If you saw the half-mile workout the other day, a lot of attention. And Gabby, you're up close to Dennis's Moment right now.
That's right. He's just walking off of the track with his first day going back into training since he did work. I'm trying to do my best to follow along here. He's not easy to keep up with. But I talked to Tammy Fox, who's obviously aboard him, and looking at his equipment that he uses, he actually wears a 3-ring bit, or sometimes some people call it a lever bit. It just gives the rider more control. It's a stronger bit than what you would think of as, a typical ring bit. Gives the rider a little bit more control over the horse. And she said she's just put it on him since he's come out here, just so that, she can have more control over him and keep his workouts at a minimum. But you can just see he does work out in a D bit, but his gallops and his jogs in a 3-ring bit. And you can just see his demeanor, guys. I mean, this horse is incredible. I've been so impressed by Dennis's Moment and Maxfield and just how wise beyond their years they are. I mean, these horses are incredible. So that's a look at him. I'm going to send it back to you guys. I'm totally out of breath.
And you're one of the most in-shape people on our staff. It just shows you how great these athletes are all the way around. And Dennis's Moment is one of the exciting horses in the TVG Breeders' Cup Juvenile, which will be the highlight to Future Stars Friday. On Saturday, the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, Mississippi is out on the track for trainer Graham Motion.
Well, her job got a little easier with the late breaking news of Magical scratching this morning. Oh, the first time this week we're going to see some draw reins here. New piece of equipment. So we were talking about the 3-ring bit and how the reins are attached to the bridle. Look at this. Mississippi is some draw reins. So these are reins that are attached to the side of the horse on the girth. The rein then goes up through the ring on the bit and back to the rider's hands. And you can see that the idea there is to stop the horse from getting his head too high, keeping his head down low, and gives the rider more leverage, more control over the horse. And what this does, the horse's head is dropped down a little lower, and therefore they use their hind end a little more. Sometimes draw reins are used to build up a horse's hind end. It's all about correct posture and correct gait. It's like a human. If you walk with your shoulders hunched over, by the end of the week, you're going to feel pretty painful in certain parts of your back and body. So the draw reins, obviously, this filly can be a little aggressive if she's got the draw reins, and 2, probably keeps her head a little high. So this gives the rider a lot more control and a lot more leverage.
While Sister Charlie is the expected favorite for the Maker's Mark Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, Mississippi knows that she can run with that one. She was second, beaten 3/4 of a length by Sister Charlie last time out in the Grade 1 Flower Bowl at Belmont Park. Mississippi coming to California to take on Sister Charlie again in the Maker's Mark Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. A number of these turf races obviously have horses from overseas, many of them arriving yesterday and going to quarantine. We always talk about quarantine, but this is a look at what it's about. And I hadn't even seen something like this up close, Simon, and great credit to the Breeders' Cup through social media bringing this to people, but explain all the assistance around here as these horses come off.
So we've got, obviously the workers, the employees from the stables that they're coming, Lord Glitters, Iridessa, of course, from Joseph O'Brien. We saw first Al Ali, Simon Crisford. So it's a quarantine, a confined area, and they're in there for 48 hours, as we mentioned, but all the staff have to wear those suits, those hazmat suits. The horse's feet, actually, we couldn't really see it on that shot there, are not allowed to touch the ground. They have mats leading all the way to the stall in the stable area, so no disease or potential disease is transmitted into the stable area, because you have a huge population of horses back here. There's 2,000, and it's just like school kids. You get a class of 30 kids, and you bring in one with just a slight fever. Within 2 or 3 days, half the class is going to be wiped out with a temperature and a fever. So all the precautions are taken until the blood tests are taken, temperatures monitored, and they clear quarantine. Back to Mississippi here. And probably this was by design to bring her out late here. My guess, without talking to Graham Motion or the connections, this is a filly that's probably can be very aggressive during traffic. That's why she's got the draw reins on. But you bring her out later. Look how quiet the track is to what we saw when we started this show. And it gives her a chance, at least her first day out here, we've seen her to be very relaxed and easygoing.
We are just a few days away from the first of 2 championship days of racing, but yet there are still horses arriving for the Breeders' Cup. For more on that story, Joaquin Jaime.
Yeah, Todd, thank you very much. Looking ahead to some of the notable arrivals that we can expect to be here at Santa Anita for tomorrow on Tuesday. A couple are going to be from the Brad Cox barn. How about Cafefe for the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint? She's put up 107 Beyer speed figures this year. She won the Grade 1 test at Saratoga's 2 starts back, and then her stablemate British Idiom is going to be arriving with her tomorrow as well. British Idiom, a winner of the Grade 1 Darley Alcibiades. She is a perfect 2 for 2 in her career. Wesley Ward's going to have a pair as well, 4-wheel drive. A son of American Pharoah, another one who's lightly raced, 2 for 2 lifetime. He won the Grade 3 Futurity at Belmont Park. What about Kamari? What about his last to first victory in the Indian Summer at Keeneland last race? And he was second, the Queen Mary at Royal Ascot back in June. A Kentucky Oaks winner will hit the grounds at Santa Anita tomorrow. Serengeti Empress is expected to arrive for trainer Tom Amish. She is, however, 0 for 3 since that victory. And then Street Band for Larry Jones, who won the Grade 1 Cotillion in her last start with Sophie Dolabord. Larry Jones seeks his first Breeders' Cup victory. He's brought some good ones to the Breeders' Cup in the past. Hard Spun, Havre de Grace, I'm a Chatterbox, Proud Spell, all certainly come to mind. So that's it, Todd. That's who we can expect for some notable arrivals coming up on Tuesday tomorrow. And it's Breeders' Cup week, man. Officially Breeders' Cup week. All these horses going to be on the grounds pretty soon.
Joaquin, fantastic work. Especially love that segment with Bob Baffert leading up to McKenzie's workout this morning. But every day matters. Every hour matters now. You just want to get by. And we saw that news with Magical. You're never there until you're there.
Exactly. And, I mean, it's good that she never got on the plane. I mean, one of the sidebars from shipping a horse is a fever. They can get what's called a fever just by getting on the airplane, getting dehydrated. She never made it onto the airplane, and that's because the care and attention to detail that these horses are given. Every single horse on the grounds here and in Europe, the temperatures are taken usually once, at least twice a day, and that prevented, a situation from becoming much worse. So she's going to retire to stud and be a happy mama now.
Yeah, the health and well-being of our equine athletes is where it all starts, and you'll see that on display for the Breeders' Cup. 2 championship days of racing this Friday and Saturday. Tickets are still available, and a record 10th time that the Breeders' Cup comes back here to Santa Anita, an ideal setting. And the conversations continue down at Clocker's Corner. And later today in the pavilion just near there, it will be the post position draw for all the Breeders' Cup races. More Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup presented by TVG in just a moment. We hope you're taking the knowledge gained from Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup and taking it to make some money both days, Friday and Saturday. We are so sure that you'll love playing with TVG that we're offering this, a $500 risk-free bet. You heard that right, $500 risk-free bet. That's why TVG is the leader in advanced deposit wagering. It's also why, one of the many reasons, TVG is the official wagering partner of the Breeders' Cup. Welcome back to Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup, presented by TVG. I'm Todd Trupp alongside Simon Bray. If you didn't join us at the beginning of the show, you missed out, but we're going to recap for you 2 significant workouts taking place. One just before we came on the air, 7 a.m. local time here in California. That was Midnight Bisou preparing for the Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff. And you if you're one of those people who looks at a favorite like this and wants to see something to say, might be vulnerable, well, Midnight Bisou's doing everything right. Maybe somebody steps up and runs the race of their life, but they're going to have to with the way Midnight Bisou looks. This was a very, very easy half mile, but it was everything the Connections wanted.
Yeah, like I said, when you're dealing with animals at this level, they're all going to work well. They're all going to look good. You're looking for a negative. And guess what? Nothing to see here. Move on. I mean, perfect. Just floating over the ground. She's got a great way of, going. She's got a very fluid motion. She's very athletic, nimble on her feet. And that translates to being an exceptional athlete. And that's exactly what she is in the afternoon. Look at her go here.
Midnight Bisou preparing for the Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff, completing a half mile and 50 and 4. And something we always emphasize on these shows, the time is basically irrelevant. It's how they do it.
Yeah.
Yes, there are going to be some really quick times that are also impressive with how they're done, but you wouldn't look down at a half mile and 50 and 4 and take notice, but you got to take notice that it's Midnight Bisou turning in this time and the way she was going about it. In the Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff, she will be a heavy favorite, and with a win, she'll complete an undefeated season and be in talk for Horse of the Year, depending on how the rest of the races play out. The Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff scheduled to go race number 10 on Saturday. And then live on our show, we followed from the barn area, including a ride on the golf cart with trainer Bob Baffert. McKenzie, who was also going to work out a half mile, and Bob told us that he was going to put some emphasis on the gallop out to 5 furlongs. And the final time for the 5 furlongs, 1 minute and 1/5.
Yep, very nice work. Again, both trainers very happy. In the case of Scott Blasi, the assistant trainer to Steve Asmussen, but we caught up with Bob after this race and after this gallop workout, and he was very, very happy with him, and rightly so. I mean, good horses show themselves, They move well, they look good, even in their slower paces. You don't need to see good animals going fast.
And Bob said afterwards to our reporters on site, he is the picture of health, and McKenzie, without a doubt, is thriving. So if you had any questions, and rightly so, after his kind of shocking defeat in the Awesome again last time out as a heavy favorite, he does look like a horse who's going to run a much better race going into the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic, but he still has to answer that question of 1.25 miles. Some of you in our Q&A at the Cup had tweeted in, well, he only lost by a nose the last time he went 1.25 miles. Why are you saying the distance is an issue? Well, it's because he lost the gift box, and these are better horses that he's facing this time around, and he was the expected favorite,
right,
and it was at Santa Anita. So, again, I think it's fair to say, can he get the 1.25 miles? Is it his optimal distance?
Yeah, that's the big question mark. I mean, watching him work there, you would think so,
Yeah.
and his physique, exactly right. But both these two horses, I mean, Midnight Bisou and McKenzie, the highlight of the day, moving as, smooth as glass. They are just silky smooth in their motion and the way they go, and that's the mark of a good athlete. It's like when I work out, the guy down at the end of the treadmill, you can hear this thumping noise on treadmill 15, and in the, there's a gap of like 3 treadmills, and there's a guy next to me going twice as fast, and you don't hear his feet. I'll look down to 15. It's you at the end of it, just pounding away. I mean, and you're going twice as slow as the guy next to me, but making twice as much noise.
You've had so many good analogies over this week, and that was probably the weakest one. This would be a good time to bring in Michelle Yu.
For sure.
So we're winding down today, but we have a lot to look forward to tomorrow. Michelle?
Flavien Prat has been scheduled to ride Blue Chipper, and he'll actually work tomorrow, but today he went out for a routine gallop. With Flavien Prat aboard, the Connections definitely wanted to make sure that Flavien was familiar with the horse, who does come out in pacifier blinkers, so it's those shades that kind of cover the horse's eyes, but they can still see through. They're a little like bug eye looking. We talked to Flavien when he was coming off and asked him, how long has it been since you've actually just galloped a horse? And he goes, maybe 4 or 5 years. But he did say that the colt went really well, and they're looking forward to working him tomorrow.
To borrow a phrase from Derek Lawson, so easy, even I could do it. Well done, Derek. Flavien Prat is going to have a lot of opportunities at the Breeders' Cup thanks to his agent and obviously thanks to his immense talent. And it's going to be fascinating to see how the Korean-based horse does here, as well as those Japanese entrants. And that's what you love about an event of the Breeders' Cup, is the nationalism, the part of it. We all realize we're part of the same ecosystem all across the world, and there is no better venue than a place like Santa Anita for everyone to come to. You got to be here this Friday and Saturday, the Breeders' Cup. Earlier today, when trainer Bob Baffert was kind enough to give us full behind-the-scenes access prior to and after McKenzie's work, Joaquin Jaime said, it seems like there's something always on your mind as a trainer. There's always something to be thinking about, and that's on display here at the racetrack. While some horses might not be working out, just behind us, we saw trainer Dan Blacker go by as his horse preparing for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf is now schooling in the paddock here, hit the road. And there is still a workout going on of consequence for the Breeders' Cup out on the track right now. Let's find out.
Just leaving the Richard Baltus barn back here, just have one more horse that's actually going to be working on the turf here, and that is going to be the Irish bred Applecross. Made the first start in Richard Baltus barn last race. That was in the Juvenile Fillies turf at Del Mar back on the 2nd of September. Flavian Pratt had a busy morning the other day, is going to be aboard for the workout, told that this filly is going to be working a half mile on the turf course. But she's not in the Juvenile Fillies turf right now. She still is on the outside looking in for Applecross. She was in the Grade 2 Queen Mary, Group 2 Queen Mary 2 starts back. She finished 22nd in the field of 25. I was just talking about Kamari arriving Tuesday for training Wesley Ward. That's the race Kamari was second in. That filly was well behind her. But in her U.S. debut in the Juvenile Fillies turf at Del Mar, she finished third, beat 4 lengths. She's going to be working a half mile on the turf with Flavian Pratt aboard heading to the track right now.
Earlier, we were talking in that conversation with Coffee at the Breeders' Cup, trainer Brendon Walsh recalling Tiz Now winning it for America at the Breeders' Cup in 2001. Before Tiz Now went to New York, he was actually upset in the Goodwood by Freedom Crest, and that horse was trained by Richie Baltus, who obviously trains that horse there amongst many other good horses and has had a fantastic career. That's what I love. You mentioned it's a big moment for Brendon Walsh. All these connections, even a guy like Bob Baffert still gets excited about the Breeders' Cup, even if he's had 15 prior
Oh,
wins.
for sure. I mean, it's the two defining marquee events in our calendar year in horse racing, the Triple Crown and the Breeders' Cup. And this kind of wraps up the year. Everyone kind of gets a little quiet after this. And now we have the Pegasus in January. We kind of pick up again. But, yeah, these wins are huge for these connections and trainers and owners.
Don't miss it this Friday and Saturday at Santa Anita. Tickets are still available. Get to breederscup.com to find out more. And we also want to make you aware of a very special series. If you haven't seen it, you're going to love this. It's called All In, The Road to the Breeders' Cup Classic. TVG is going to be re-airing these episodes. Episode 1 will air tonight, 11 o'clock Eastern Time, 8 o'clock Pacific. You can find them online. But if you want to go according to the schedule, we'll air it on TVG. All In, The Road to the Breeders' Cup Classic. And the Breeders' Cup Classic will be the highlight of 2 days of racing here at Santa Anita. Coming back for a record 10th time. There's one of the areas of interest that we've shown you all morning long. 2 areas to school from the gate. And that one, we saw Omaha Beach earlier today, coming back yet again for trainer Dick Mandela. And a lot of talk about Donna Veloce and the immense talent she has. She is going to be a very solid favorite in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies as part of Future Stars Friday with her trainer right now, Gabby Gaudet.
We're back at Simon Callahan's barn to get to know Donna Veloce a little bit better. And Simon, how could you describe her as a horse?
She's really straightforward to be around, very inquisitive, as you can see. She's definitely a very intelligent filly, and as regards to training, she just likes the job and likes to get on with it.
I've seen that from her. She just seems so focused when she gets out there. She knows exactly what she needs to do, and she looks like she enjoys it.
Yeah, very much so. Just likes to get in the zone, and just likes to go out there and do it. And been really happy the way she's been training.
I think she also has a very good nose on her, or maybe she saw the handoff, because I got her favorite treat here, which is a cookie. A horse cookie, not for human consumption. I think Simon thought I was going to eat it here for a second, but she really likes those. If she prefers the cookie, she's not a mint type of gal.
No, more the cookies, carrots, but no, she's pretty easy to be around.
She's so cool. She's such a classy filly. Very, very sweet. Very sweet. Okay, let's go over here because we're going to go in front of the stall of Miss Hot Legs and be introduced to Lucy. I'm not getting too close because you told me she doesn't like women.
Yeah, she definitely favors men for whatever reason. She's pretty good to all the guys around here, but she can sometimes take a dislike to women.
Well, why would a trainer have a goat in the barn? Can you describe why you would have this?
It can just be a calming influence, particularly this filly. She's a little bit more highly strung, and just having a companion around just seems to keep her a bit more relaxed.
So this is just their setup. Does Lucy ever go in the stall, or does she just hang out in front?
Lucy, I think, is smart enough to not go in the stall, but she tends to just hang out in front of it and, just keep this filly calm.
I love this one. I'm not going to get too close to Lucy. Plus, she looks very, very comfortable here. Simon, one final question about Donna Veloce. I mean, speak to the mind that she has in the kind of the decision to run her in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, just because it is a big ask going from a maiden sprint race to a 2-turn Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies.
Yeah, I mean, she's got a really professional mindset. She came out of a 2-year-old in training sales, so she saw quite a lot early in life. But the thing I really have enjoyed seeing since that race, it's not really woken her up. It hasn't, some fillies can get a bit sort of more buzzy since an initial race. But this filly has taken it all in her stride. We've taken her back to the gate, stood her. She's been really calm and professional, paddock schooling since, like doing all the things that you kind of like to see, and that gives us the confidence that, going for this race is the right thing to do.
Looks like she's checked all the boxes. All right, now she's starting to dance here, so we'll let you go and get back to work. Thank you so much, Simon.
Great, thanks so much.
All right, back to you guys. There's Donna Veloce, Lucy, and others here from the Simon Callahan barn.
Yeah, her debut win, it looked like she could have run a mile and a half holding her breath.
For sure.
And so the question is how ultimately the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies will play out if she's on the lead, if she's stalking the pace, but she's going to be the favorite.
Yeah, she will be the favorite. I mean, it's a big ask, but I think she's got the talent to do it. She's got the pedigree to go the distance, and again, trip is key here. But having the right mind, we've talked about that all week, the mental aspect, and you heard it there from Simon Callahan. You know, the most important thing after a first race is seeing how the fillies especially react, and she's reacting perfectly there.
We saw Applecross headed to the track, working for trainer Richie Baltus, trying to get to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies on the turf, and Applecross about to have that workout. It was our understanding that Applecross would work on the turf. To this point, we haven't seen a lot of workouts on the grass on our show.
No, we haven't, and she'll be working outside of the dogs or the cones, those orange cones. They're going to preserve the turf course as much as possible, so I'm sure the inside rail is out, and then these workers will be out even further than that. But as we mentioned, the chances of Applecross getting into the race are probably very, very slim at this point, I would think. She's way down there on the also eligibles.
She was third in the Juvenile fillies turf, a prep at Del Mar, and some of the horses in front of her will actually end up going. She was over in Europe in the Queen Mary against Kamari, whom we were talking about is in one of the big races on Future Stars Friday. But Applecross was a massive long shot overseas, and even if she were to draw into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies turf, would certainly have that role once again. Would have to be a major spoiler if she gets in. But at least we're getting a look here at the turf course and how some of these workouts go. And as Simon mentioned, the dogs out are the highway pylons to keep the horse out into the middle of the turf course and save a majority of the turf course from wear and tear.
Yeah, she moves beautifully over the turf here. She's moving really, really well. By a good-sized Soprancelot, who's, you know, his offspring have done well here stateside, specifically in California as well. So there she switches leads on cue, and she just taking it all in right here. I don't think she's ever worked on the turf course here at Santini. She had some workouts on the grass at Del Mar earlier this summer, I seem to remember, but very fluid mover over the grass here.
Applecross finishing up work here for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies turf. In a tough situation, you've got to prepare for a race that you probably know you're not going to get into. But again, those preparations have to continue and could benefit when a spot does come up for a horse like Applecross eventually.
There'll be some options on the undercards and the day surrounding the Breeders' Cup for her should she not get in.
Watching live Applecross over the turf course here at Santa Anita, helping us put an exclamation point on what has been another fantastic morning here. Ideal conditions for training, and there will be ideal conditions for racing on both Breeders' Cup days. As we said, cooling in the area. I know there's been a lot of national news about the fires that have broken out in various areas. They are well away from where Santa Anita is. This is very different from, than, say, 2003, when you could literally see the smoke coming from the hills around. The air quality great, and the great race place is showing off with how beautiful it has been here this week and will be for the Breeders' Cup. Michelle.
We're watching Hit the Road right now for trainer Dan Blacker, but I'm actually standing with Craig Rosenthal, who we call Boomer around here. Boomer, you picked this horse out. What did you like about him? I can see what you like about him now, but what did you like about him when he was a baby?
Like you see now, he's got a lot of class. Like, you know, at the sale, he just didn't turn a hair. Great mover, and he looked really forward. You know, he's really developed in the chest. Huge hip on him. At the time, it was a stage where it wasn't over big, so overlooked by quite a lot of people. But to me, like, he had that scope there. He's going to grow, and as you can see now, like, he's a big, imposing horse. So, but really, just the class. He's got a lot of presence about him, and super temperament.
When you're looking for horses, you go to so many different sales and you buy from at least 3 different countries that I can think of off the top of my head. Is it hard to kind of separate it in your mind? Like, okay, this one looks more American-y, this one looks more Euro, because they do have different body types, I feel like, when they're successful in their different countries.
Yeah, you've got the different types, but at the end of the day, you just look at, I think the ones, if you're just looking for horses that you think look fast, that's, fast and quality, you'll end up okay.
Well, I think this one looks plenty fast, so Hit the Road. Going to be Dan Blacker's very first Breeders' Cup starter, and I'm sure he's happy to have Boomer by his side. I saw you helping put the schooling saddle on here. Do you have your assistant trainer's license going?
Yeah, it's been a while. I've graduated from hot walker to bloodstock agent, so took a step back again. It's great to be around the horses again.
The good news is if you need help, I can have Joaquin come in.
Yeah, he's the benchmark, so we've got got to live up to that.
Guys.
So Boomer and Dan go way back. They were on the Dolly Flying Star program together, and as we know, Boomer, as he's well known, Boomer Bloodstock, you follow him on Twitter, is the son-in-law of the late great Mike Mitchell, married to his daughter McCall. So family affair there, and it's going to be a big moment for both of those, young trainer and young Bloodstock agent.
A lot going on around the Breeders' Cup, a lot of significant events. We mentioned that the post-position draw will happen later. You see the WinStar Pavilion, which hosts breakfast. That's the area where they're going to have the post-position draw later. Elliot Walden, who is the president and CEO and manager of the racing operation for WinStar, also has another event that I wanted to mention. So while we remind you of the post-position draw coming up today, it was Elliot who was the impetus, along with his staff, for putting together what they're calling the Backstretch Bash. This is going to happen tomorrow here at Santa Anita from 4:30 to 7:30. I'll be at Sorona's in the Paddock Gardens. And essentially, this is to reward all the help on the backside, everyone putting the long hours. It's such a community. And so Elliot has gotten together a number of volunteers to essentially give the help who do so much and work the long hours, and their families are all committed to it too, a chance for them to actually enjoy Breeders' Cup Week. So you've seen a lot of these people working so hard in the mornings. They're going to have barbecue, live entertainment, giveaways, prize drawings. So again, if you're a backstretch worker and you haven't heard about it, it's the Backstretch Bash coming up tomorrow here at Santa Anita from 4:30 to 7:30.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, and it's another example of how our industry reaches out and takes care and really cares.
Yeah, there's a great marquee here with, Eggs Benedict, but that's for, connections and owners. Everybody
right.
doing the work back there, they're not forgotten about. And thanks to Elliot and his team, they're putting on a great event for them tomorrow. It's well-deserved because the hours back there, believe me, are long, very, very long. It's arduous, it's tedious, it's, early mornings, and people do it for the love, not for the money. So we need to give back to them. They're doing that tomorrow.
And Elliot had told me ahead of time, he's like, don't mention my name. And I understand where that comes from, but he deserves credit because he was the organizer behind it. But a number of people stepped up to make it happen. So that happens tomorrow and Tuesday. And TVG will have coverage of the post-position draw later this afternoon. So before we wrap up our show, back to some of our reporters with some thoughts ahead to tomorrow.
If you've been watching all the feed on the Santa Anita racetrack, you'll see a white horse with nothing on his head, and you might think, oh my gosh, that horse is loose, but he's not. He's actually just bridleless Wyatt, to be exact. I'm joined by his owner and trainer, Donna Keene. Why bridleless?
Well, when he was 3 years old and we were breaking him to be a pony at the racetrack, he kept taking it off anyway, so what's the point?
Tell me, how do you teach him to be bridleless?
When I first got Wyatt, I taught him a lot of dressage moves, how to side pass, half pass, how to do that backwards. A good pony needs to know how to go any different direction at any given time because we never know what's going to happen with the racehorses. So once we taught him all that, we took the bridle off, and he remembered all of his leg cues, seat cues, and made a really good bridleless pony.
Now, he is not unique in this barn. There is actually another bridleless pony here. I'm joined by Tortuga Straits, and the cool thing about him is he was a stakes winner. Why take a racehorse and turn him into a bridleless pony? Doesn't that make you nervous?
No, it's really about showing people just how smart the thoroughbreds are and how they can be trained to do anything after racing. A lot of horses have long careers, second careers after they run, and Tortuga's one of those horses. He was actually claimed from a $5,000 stake race, as a lot of horses do after they've won their stake races. They drop down in class, and Maggie Moss claimed him and won a four-way shake and donated him to our rescue to rehome, and Dallas fell in love with him and wanted to keep him.
Now, when you first got to him, were you thinking, oh, this horse is wonderful, I'm going to turn him bridleless, or was that kind of an evolution?
That was kind of an afterthought. He was a little mean when we first got him, would charge the front of the stall, a little grouchy, but after a month or so, he turned into a big teddy bear.
Now, when you're on the horse, obviously a racehorse or a general horse, they have a bridle around their head and they've got a bit in their mouth that controls them. Since you are lacking that piece of equipment, how do you steer?
We steer with our legs. We use a lot of leg work, which we teach them with a bridle before we go bridleless. But how we stop the horses is this strap around their neck. When you lift it up and use it up a little higher, you can keep the weight off the horse's front end, which will keep them from running off.
Tortuga Straits is actually a 7-time stakes winner. So when you're out there and maybe breaking a horse off and, getting ready to go fast, do you ever think, oh my gosh, he might take off with me?
No, he thinks about it for a second, but then he remembers he has a job to do. He likes his job.
All right. Well, this has been super fun getting to know Bridleless Wyatt and Bridleless Tortuga Straits back here. And now you know if you see him on the racetrack where these famous guys are from. And Bridleless Wyatt, you can also follow him on social media.
Where would humankind be without the horse? We would not be anywhere near where we are now. They helped settle the great Southwest in so many parts of this world, and we love our horses in the world of thoroughbred racing. I hope you've seen that over the course of these shows. Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup. What a day today.
Fantastic day. I mean, all around with the two works, the final works from Midnight Bisou and McKenzie, and access to Bob Baffert was just outstanding.
We hope you've enjoyed the program as much as we've enjoyed putting it on for you. We'll be back tomorrow on Tuesday talking about what happened in the post-position draw. We wish all the connections well, and we thank them so much for the access they've given us to bring you Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup, brought to you by TVG.